Going, all right. Welcome to our work session today for May 21st. We're going to start with board and commission interviews, of which we have one, and that is Mary Bargeron for the Sustainability Commission. And Mary, if you will just come right on up there and share with us why you'd like to be on the commission and what you think you'd bring to the commission as a member.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having me. Katie, thanks for helping arrange this. I thought I might have to zoom in. And I also wanted to just acknowledge that Jeff Tomich and John Hickey spent some time talking about this. So just so you know, your commissioners are really awesome. And you talked to me last year. So hi, Mary Bargeron. I've lived in Webster Groves since 2000. I think I'm supposed to share a little bit about myself. So real quickly, I actually grew up in Buffalo, New York, went away to college. In college, I studied economics and political science. In graduate school, I studied cultural foundations of education, and I got a master's degree in public administration. I was a stay-at-home mom and had a blast. Was in Webster Groves for like half of that. Both of our boys went through Webster Groves schools. Why I'm interested in this role? I was thinking about it, and I thought of three main reasons, chunky reasons. One is to help get great stuff done. I think you guys really have a hard job. You need good information, good input from your stakeholders in the community. And I feel like I would really enjoy and bring good quality to that. The job I do now is I work for the Nature Conservancy. It's a global nonprofit conservation organization. I've been a fundraiser with them for almost 20 years. And so I'm somewhat familiar with some of the different sustainability spaces, from nature-y stuff to biodiversity stuff to some kind of energy, climate issues. So I have that background to draw from, which I think would be helpful. I also am aware that you have a sustainability plan, which was developed, and super exciting to see some of the what laid out. I'm really curious about how would this really get done? Because a lot of the devil's in the details, and the how can change like everything from who you include, from whether you leave yourselves room to adapt and adjust as you're moving towards your goal. So I think it's really cool to join you all during like the how time. Prop W puts you in some interesting opportunities, and I'm sure hopefully you'll be wanting some input from the community around that. So I'm well aware of that and would be eager to support your decision making. The second thing I'm really interested in is learning from you all. Like this is where the rubber meets the road, and all the big strategy stuff that we can talk about at places like the Nature Conservancy have to turn into actual decisions made on timelines with real budgets for real people. So I'm kind of curious to see, get under the hood and see how this all works. The last thing I would say is service. I really believe public service is important. The last time I did public service in Webster Groves was probably my stint as PTO president over at Avery, which is a really different kind of public service. But I think now, especially in these times, it's really important for people to see that government works, that their municipal government can deliver for them. It's really energizing that this is like a nonpartisan place where we're just trying to get good stuff done. And I would just really like to be part of that. So those are some things that occurred to me to share, if that's helpful.
Excellent. Questions?
Thank you. Sure.
I don't think. So I told you it'd be easy.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for
So
inviting.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Katie will be in touch shortly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'll
Yeah.
leave you
Bye,
to
Mary.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Anybody have anything to review on the regular agenda? Just a heads up, Emily and I spoke before, if we're gonna run into a time problem with our agenda, we will postpone the public engagement charter amendment for another meeting or two, because we have a very full plate of things going on today. We have manager, attorney, clerk, and council member updates. I'm gonna suggest we keep those brief tonight, given how we're trying to move along here. Pam?
Sustainability Commission met last night, and again, they're just trying to organize their initiatives based on wrapping up what is underway already. There's talking about starting a new composting initiative, something to help remove barriers for residents to compost on a daily basis or an everyday basis. So that is something they're going to be looking into, and otherwise it's all strategic plan oriented and stuff that's kind of already been on the plate. And then I hope it's okay if I talk about the meeting with the Lakota group last night. I thought that was a good meeting with council, and just nice to hear their questions were really thoughtful. And it's nice that we were able to expand on our thoughts. And I have told some people about the Journey to WG survey, and that's still alive. So that's good to know. We're going to keep that up for another week, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Had Historic Preservation Commission meeting, and it was my last meeting on the commission, and Karen will go back on that. She's been on it before, so they're excited to have her back, and just wanted to publicly say that they've done a great job and they work really hard. And I didn't say that at the board and commission updates on Wednesday. So they're a really strong commission and appreciate the work that they do. And then I also enjoyed our conversation yesterday with Lakota group and shared that out. So hopefully more people can go out and fill out that survey. I think it's a really exciting opportunity.
Excellent.
That's it.
Everson?
No updates, ma'am.
Hi, I attended a Great Rivers Greenway meeting this morning. It was basically them introducing what they did and getting some feedback from their partners. So that was kind of cool. I echo the work session that we had for boards and commissions was incredible. I really thought that was meaningful. And our conversation as a council yesterday with Lakota, and then yeah, that's it.
I would tag onto the comp plan survey as well. So we've extended it for 2 weeks, but really are encouraging people to fill it out. We only had about 80 responses. There's not a perfect number, but it'd be nice to have a couple hundred. I've heard a couple of complaints that it's a little long and it's open-ended, and it is open-ended, and that's purposeful. You know, we didn't want to give people pick from these 3 or 4 options. We want people's opinions, and it's meant to be a blank slate canvas. So we hope that people, even if they don't make it through all the questions, give us some thoughts. So last thing, we have 4 police officers starting with us over the next couple of weeks. So we're really excited about that, get our staffing back up. Huge thanks to Acting Chief Perks. He's really worked hard on recruitment efforts.
Okay.
I'm gonna defer all my
Reposition.
time.
Hold it now.
Yes, sir. All right, you've given all your time to Katie.
We will find at the table. Yeah, that's much information. That I worked on to make it applicable to the city of Webster Groves.
Thank you. And thank you to Karen and Katie and Eric for facilitating us to come back in here. Anybody who has not been with us in work session here before, the idea is that we might have better conversations if we can see each other and not be so far apart and set away from everyone else. So I'm going to be really brief. I went to some regional municipal meetings, mayor's meetings, Eastern Missouri Municipal League. Nothing really is ripe for us at this point, but there's some things going on about. The one thing that I will mention is it looks like they're going to be competing police training centers with St. Charles and O'Fallon competing with St. Louis County in terms, and competing means right now they're all trying to figure out how they're going to pay for these things. We will at some point be asked for a letter of support. And so I have just asked Dr. Peoples to be aware of that. I don't think there's something the council really is going to have to weigh in on. I think probably it'll just be whatever meets the needs of our police department the best. So we'll see how that
Letter
moves
of
forward.
support for one over the other.
Or a letter of sort of maybe for both in terms of their funding requests.
Oh.
So I don't know, they haven't come yet, but this is going to be an ongoing discussion, I think, as they both try and figure out how they're going to pay for what they're going to do. All right, we're going to go straight. What has anyone remembered anything? This is the time that usually happens. No, okay. We're going to go straight then to thinking about feedback for boards and commissions based on our meeting last week. I will just say, I think I said it last week, but if I didn't, I'm glad I'm going to say it now. I really, really enjoyed that session. I enjoyed the process the boards and commissions went through, both with their staff liaisons, their chairs and members, to give us a real document that we could digest. I'm gonna suggest that we just go through in the order that we saw them. And then at the end of I sent you all, or Katie sent on my behalf, a summary document with your work session backup.
She did.
It was in there. And I did what you asked, Emerson. We pulled out all the priorities from the document so that it's a shorter document. And I'm just gonna ask that we walk through, because we have two things that we need to do for each of these. Endorse or change or emphasize something differently in work plans, and then approve or disapprove budget. Did Eric come back? We may need him to explain some of the
Oh, sure.
but the business district budgets, because it's still a little unclear, some of it to me. So
My tie on, folks.
yeah, sorry, that's all right. You just heard your name invoked. So I'm gonna start with the Arts Commission. Is there anyone, they presented a work plan that's focusing mostly on updating the Arts Master Plan in order to really have that dovetail with the comprehensive plan and then support some of the events that they've traditionally supported. Is there anyone who wants to make any comments on their work plan, or do we think that's good as written?
The work plan, or you're talking about the budget as well?
I'm talking about the work plan first, and then we'll talk about the budget. So I'm getting no comments on, and actually, let me back up a step. The way in which, Dr. Peoples and I've actually discussed with a couple of you, I sort of envision this being that we will go through this document today. I will draft a letter, that comes from the liaison and from myself, sort of saying, here's what your budget is, here's what our reaction to your work plan. I think many of them are gonna be, thanks for the work plan, that's great, go ahead. But that way we'll have something formal to transmit to the commission, and then it will be the council liaison's responsibility for discussing that with commission members, board members at the next meeting. Does that make sense to you all? Okay. All right, so back to the Arts Commission. Any comments on their work plan? All right, any comments on their the budget request is $5,900, which is, I believe, slightly less than past budgets. All right, then I'm gonna no comments, and I'm gonna say we're gonna accept both the budget and the work plan as written.
Yes.
ARB is gonna be real easy because there's no budget and the work plan is doing their job very well, and I appreciate them wanting to do their job very well.
I see a couple people looking. I'm gonna go print off.
Oh, print off this document? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go through the easy ones then while, so I'm gonna suggest that, we don't, it was at the very end of the work session backup,
Yeah.
the last document.
And if you scroll, it like pops it in and out of size.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's because it's landscape.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so can we accept the work plan and the zero budget from ARB?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Mhm.
All right, City Plan Commission. Again, this is essentially a zero budget request with doing their job plus engagement in the comprehensive plan process, and frankly, we can't do the comp plan process without them, so let's hope that they're engaged.
Do we want to ask them to look at anything before that's done, or we want to just roll it all together? I'm thinking like ADUs and occupancy permits.
I would, but I'm, yeah.
Well, I just didn't know, like, timing wise.
Ask your question again.
We've talked about having the city, which would probably start with plan commission, look at accessory dwelling units and occupancy permits. But I wasn't sure if we wanted to start that request to them to look at now, or if we wanted until after the comp plan's done and roll it in with those recommendations.
After the comprehensive plan.
How long is it?
Yeah, I don't think we have to wait. I think personally, it's as much a staffing consideration as anything.
Yeah.
Because I know that, or is it am I correct that someone who's supposed to start this week did not start this week?
Correct.
So,
Is they gonna start next week?
No, they are not going to be starting.
they accepted a different job at the last minute, yeah.
I mean, go ahead.
No,
Well,
that's frustrating.
I agree with your comment. I think they need to put it on their work plan so it don't lose sight. I wouldn't wait till the comprehensive plan is done.
And I recognize staff time and I know like Mara's gonna be slammed with
Yeah.
stuff too, so I don't know like how high of a priority to put on it, but I just don't wanna lose sight of it, would like to get started on it. If that's fair.
So. I mean, we can write this as we would like them to consider this as time becomes available.
Yeah.
That work.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay, anything else on plan commission?
that's all I had.
Anybody else?
Mhm.
All right, historic preservation commission. Anyone have anything to? Does historic preserve, I can't remember if
They announced.
they don't even have they don't have a budget either, okay. All right.
They do have a budget. There's, so some programs, 7, they have $1,220 appropriated. 1,000 in special events, 200 in advertising is requested.
Okay, and that's different than their requesting document that we received, though.
They requested this last year.
For HPC,
It could be, we received the requesting documents after the budget was entered, so I don't know
Oh, that would make
if that
sense.
is a change.
But they say they have no funding request for
Yeah,
2025 budget.
We made assumptions at the.
Yeah,
budget
that's
those that
fine,
received
okay.
24 received the same.
Yeah, I'm
Alright.
looking at the write-up too, no budget request
Yeah.
there, so I'm okay removing that, or you do a VA then.
okay, so
What was that amount again, Eric?
1,220
okay. But, all right, and then again, this is one, I think it's good to emphasize the comprehensive plan
Mhm.
involved.
And they're very, involved, in it. I mean, they have been invested in that.
Okay, traffic advisory.
So I think there's 2,500 on here, and I think there's 1,000 in the recommended budget that we have.
So I'm gonna suggest that we work with the numbers that they asked for. And then we can make the budget amendments to make that match
Mhm.
what it is that we have in there. So their
Okay.
request was 2,500.
And-
Right?
and
Okay.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
that, does that include the, amount that they asked for afterwards? Cause like, it was after our last meeting, right, that they met? And then there was like an additional,
So their report to us came in later, but it did come in with the amount requested.
okay, so
So
the
the-
additional,
No, it's a
Additional.
2,500 is the
Okay,
total
okay,
request.
Yeah, okay, yeah. We have 1,000 in our book, but this would be instead of 1,000.
Yeah.
gotcha, thank you.
Feel free to add them if you want.
So, I'm just gonna, I think the work plan generally looks very good and I appreciate the SS4A, work with the task force there. I really, would like us, or I would like to emphasize a little bit the educational program, the development of that. That will be an important component of SS4A as well. And I think if we're gonna maintain complete streets beyond just the SS4A grant, we need a community that really understands what complete streets is. So
Yeah.
I just like to put a little star by that one if anyone else doesn't
Number two?
object. Yeah, that's number 2.
Yeah. No objection to the star.
Yeah. Second step.
As long as it's not an asterisk, but it's.
So we have, then I think it's not, I don't think it's listed on here, but I think that's another one where we mentioned the comprehensive planning process, but we want that to fold into there as well.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, are we okay with the budget amount?
Yes.
All right, PCEB. Yeah, anyone with thoughts on the work plan there?
Well. Their, presentation, David mentioned several times about the word evolve. And I would like for us to look at how the PCEB can evolve. The work plan that they have now, the work plan they had last year, and the work plan they had year before last. But nothing is actually being not up there, completed or have any type of resolution to it. So I think the PCB can do better and work looking at public safety versus just looking at PCEB, the police community engagement force. I can see them having a very effective role in public safety with the police, with the fire department, you know, and just learning things about public safety and all over the city. Fire alarms, smoke detectors and things of that nature. I think that PCEB is limiting their ability to actually really produce for the city.
So we've been down this road and we've changed the ordinance once. I guess the question is, what kind of instruction would we like to give them as part of responding to their work plan? Is the response more like something to the effect of, we've seen a similar work plan in successive years without real implementation?
Correct.
What's a plan to fix that? I'm not quite sure what you're asking in terms of,
Basically, I'd like us to consider the direction of the PCEB. Because like looking at the work plan, John Buck, I thought he had resigned from the PCEB. We're going to talk to Webster University staff. We're going to talk to the high school staff. Only thing new on there is going to look at a senior citizen. Virtual town hall, business community, even some of those are the same things that have been on there for the last 2 or 3 years. And I think if we can focus them on public safety, I believe it'll be a very effective.
So that's
Is
not part of
that an
their,
ordinance change?
yeah.
yeah, so I think, so that's, to me, we're having 2 separate conversations here. One is, how are we gonna respond to their work plan? And 2, the second conversation is more of a council discussion. What do we see the long-term role of the PCEB? And so I think we can do the first part now. I don't think we can do the second part in this context, really, if.
Well, it's fine. I just don't want them to get too far in a year. We're still talking about this in November, December, to change their direction, and then we'll be right back with the commissions and boards doing another report to the city council.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to see something fairly quickly to them. Actually, I have no problem in making the suggestion to them to see how they feel about that.
Well,
That's like a change in scope too, right?
it is.
So, and like, in the meantime, we need to let them know, like, these things that they have here, until we look at maybe changing their scope, if we do that, do we want to give them feedback back on these things based on their current charge?
Spring of 2024 is already gone for Webster University. The students are out of school this week and next week.
So Emerson, I'm gonna suggest that you go ahead and make a request for work session time to talk about the scope question.
Okay.
Because we as a council need to have that conversation. And maybe you and I can come up with, does anyone object to anything that's in their scope of work for this year? Then we can maybe work on some language as the liaison to, include the fact that council will be having this discussion. So that it doesn't come as a surprise and you can talk about it then.
I want to make mention to Lexi as well, the chair, so she'll
Yeah.
know that these conversations are happening.
Well, and it should be part of, I think, the letter that we send to them.
Yes.
just, again, it's not fair to them to send them off in a direction and then
Right.
reel it back in.
May,
Please.
if I may, within their work plan, they have also proposed a change to the ordinance. I don't know if that was noticed, and they'd like to have DEI training specified within the ordinance. So should council decide to have additional ordinance changes or conversations, that might be an opportunity to consider.
All right. Let's keep going here. Sustainability.
And it was a yes for the budget though.
Sustainability as a $1,000 budget request. And then 4-part work plan. And this
That's
is,
good.
I want to add the comp plan to this too, though. I don't
Yes.
think they have the comp plan on here.
And would it be prudent to say also the destination or the prop W?
I thought they had it in there somewhere. Maybe
Oh,
not,
they do
maybe,
number 4.
Thank you.
okay.
There we go. Mhm.
You know, and personally, and Mary mentioned it in her interview as well. I'd like to emphasize a little bit, them giving us some help and really thinking about in the sustainability plan, what should we be doing next? You know, you mentioned a new initiative. I want to make sure we don't forget what we put in that framework, and it's probably part of it already, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to wrap up where they are, what they've got open, and then
Okay.
go back to the sustainability plan,
Perfect.
strategic plan to. I mean, it's just good they have a guiding document for that.
Yeah.
And they don't have to. Yes.
All right, so are we good with where we are there?
Yeah.
Okay, sustain,
I do.
oh, sorry.
They're asking for a budget of $1,000. Is that really enough?
Yeah, I was thinking that too, but they have like kind of, there are other funds in the budget that they have kind of like a dotted line to, right? Like the green dining thing and.
So
They have an
auxiliary
extra,
day.
they have a special budget for sustainability that
I was looking at
covers
the-
these other items.
It'll cover these items here,
Correct, yeah.
and that's all part of the education process.
So let's also remember that we can make amendments to the budget. I would rather take them at their word that this is what they need, and if they find another need, come back and they certainly can then ask.
That's just a question.
Yeah.
I mean, just seeing their goals, what
Mhm.
they want to attain, and ask for $1,000, and I can see a lot of educational practices going there, so.
And I think a lot of like our new deputy city manager, like that role will be a pivotal, I feel like, in helping them with this education piece. I hope I didn't speak out of turn there. Assuming that.
Okay.
All right, can we move on to green space? So. Sorry, I put their budget request in the way they put it in, and I can't remember what, oh, I did title it on the little chart at the bottom, so $9,925. Much of which they expect to come from the tree fund, which I have been informed the tree fund can cover that cost. And then 3 primary initiatives for this fiscal year.
Yeah, I think that's good. They're a really active commission. These are kind of ongoing initiatives, but they get like a little bit bigger each time, like Green Our City will builds on what's happened the last couple of years. So I think that they'll accomplish these. Good things to plan for them.
All right, can I put a check mark by that then?
Mhm.
Parks and Rec,
Real quick, tree fund conversation, if I can slide up here.
yes, please slide up here.
So the tree fund is not a budgeted fund. So we're gonna need an amendment if you're intending to take that $9,925, what is gonna come out of the tree fund? Needs to be removed from the budget. It's not part of the scheduled appropriations. I have a real problem with that. Because essentially, we as staff you have the ability to just make expenditures out of the tree fund, but outside of that, it exists without your oversight. So if you're gonna move it there, just know it has to come out of the budget.
All right, so that is the first of these that we need an amendment for, correct?
And TAC if you're adding it to the budget and if you're. taking
Oh, yeah,
historic
that's right. I
preservation
forgot
out,
TAC wasn't in there. That's right. Okay.
I think that the plant materials line especially comes from the tree fund, but I don't know as far as what's allowed on the tree fund, how much else can, but I think that 4375 probably can safely. I think that was what they had kind of flagged. Is the greener city, like buying the trees for that.
May we ask for a staff recommendation on the amount that we should take from the tree fund to put in that amendment? Not at this, you don't have to do it right this second, but at some point. Looks like you could. Well, if you want to, please go ahead.
I would agree that the rest of those amounts shouldn't come out of the tree fund. It's that ordinance is dedicated solely to plant materials. So you can take that full 43
Okay.
out from,
4375.
yeah.
And so we won't see that in the book at all then.
He's gonna figure out a way to get in the book for next year. I'm
Okay.
sure.
If we're nickeling
In a
it,
budget.
it's 44 cents. At least in their thing.
Oh, it's different on the
Yeah.
summary.
43 versus 44.
Yeah.
Did I
don't know
make a
if it makes-
typo? I
it's
probably made a
just
typo.
It's just a
In the budget
100.
document, it's 40%.
Okay. All right. Are we good? We good with green space then?
Yes.
Thank you, Eric, by the way. Parks and Recreation, have requested a 0 budget and review fee structures as well as they're gonna do lots of work on Prop W. Anything else?
It seems like a short amount of words for a lot of.
Well, and I gotta tell you, I wanna add the comp plan words in there too, because they should at least have a session, I think, with Lakota.
Well, do we need to add that for green space too?
They already had it in
There,
theirs.
sorry.
Mayor, I'd like us to give consideration, since we noted about Prop W and all the work that's gonna happen in the next 3-4 years. Is that we utilize some type of management tool to keep track of where all the projects are, what they're doing, what stage they're in. So we want it to be easier for the update council to see what type of funds have been expended so far.
Be good for community updates too.
Conservatively, at the size of this project, that things can easily get misplaced or sideways. So once
Okay.
you start the different items, solar panels and all that stuff, so that there'll be some type of tracking mechanism that can be easily shared with council to see what they're at.
All right. Anything else for Parks?
That would be a staff.
I think,
not
yeah,
a
so I was
Parks and
You
gonna.
know, there was a recommendation that something
Commission.
happens
Yeah.
with that.
Thank you, it's a good opportunity to pop in. So I'll get with Renee Tyler, who we've all been able to meet. She started this week. She's started some of those I'm sorry?
She's behind you.
Just so you know.
I'm gonna keep talking about her, she's not in the room. She's gotten off to a great start this week.
I should have let you get to the great part before I told her.
She's had several conversations, obviously, with Public Works, and starting those conversations with Mr. Davis, Parks and Rec, but Ms. Tyler has a lot of project management experience, and we've already talked some about some project management software for various
good.
things. So we'll be coming forth with some recommendations for the organization long-term, not just for Prop W as we manage these projects. It will require a budget amendment at some point in time, and most likely we will not be at that stage within the June meeting. So it will probably come after the fiscal year. So glad.
All right, let's talk about Business Development Commission. Their report has a $5,000 request as well as a $45,000 request. I sort of ignored the $45,000 request because the chair didn't bring it up at all in the meeting that we had.
She did.
She did?
Yes, she did.
What did she say?
She said she would like a business development person for $45,000.
And it was in the future, is what I thought I heard, not in this fiscal year. Was I wrong about that? Maybe I misheard the whole thing.
It is technically their request.
Okay. Okay.
Communications to the economic development.
All right, then I stand corrected. Thank you. So how about if we do their work plan first, and then we'll do the budget? They, obviously, there's several ongoing things. And then they had 3 items for this year, including the broader discussion of the community improvement district.
Mhm.
And it sounds to me like of the $4,000 part of the request, at least a portion of that will be to work on materials and presentations for the CID. That CID discussion, that made it sound like it was a done deal, and I don't think we're to that point yet.
So I'm comfortable with that part.
Okay,
For
I'm
sure.
okay
I
with
think that's
4,000.
Okay.
worth exploring. We'll take some-
okay, so the work plan is good. We'll take the 4,000, let's 45,000 then.
This piece was not included in the proposed budget.
Of course,
This is
right.
not included.
Both 4,000 was.
4,000 was, the 45,000 is not.
So-
proposed.
It is a commission request, but not a staff recommendation. Okay.
So that 45,000 is out.
Unless we do. a
Unless we
budget
put it
amendment
in.
to Put it in.
Are we all in agreement with that?
Are you?
Yeah.
What, leave it at?
Mhm.
I am.
I think it's valid, but they don't have enough information.
We're
They
not
need-
there yet.
they're not yet there yet, yeah. I
I
mean,
think-
someday,
And once they do a CID.
Well, that's
it
correct.
might be-
they have to
Need.
demonstrate a real need, basically.
Okay. Crossroads. So Eric, you're gonna have to explain to me what their budget request is and what it is relative to previous years.
So Crossroads and Old Orchard both have a relatively cost to continue budget. There's nothing major changing there except for, again, manager's proposal on the staff, the Parks and Rec transfer, eliminating the transfer and going to the staff and commodities costs going directly billed to those districts as they are expended. So. those
Which makes
staff
the budget more fluid because we don't know exactly what that.
That's correct.
is
We
gonna be.
we always built the budget on an estimate anyway. Right?
Okay.
It was about 50% Old Webster, 40% Old Orchard, 10% Crossroads. We looked at all the different assets and the size and such. And then those numbers all changed as you went through the year. Okay, so Crossroads got some more attention this year, so it may gotten a little different budget and number of that. That this takes now what was in Parks 38. Parks Business District and moves those expenses into the 3 business districts on that ratio, the 50-40-10. But that's all an estimate again, that's a plan estimate. All the actual costs will be directly billed. So staff, when they spend watering, 3 staff, maybe 4 hours each watering in Old Webster, that's gonna be 12 hours in Old Webster at those rates for those staff. This is 1 staff, we've always built the budget on 1 FTE for business districts, and usually it's works out, that person obviously doesn't do 2,000 hours in that business districts, but other people join in, so there's enough hours by the time it's added that we're in that range. If we ever go under, we don't spend the whole transfer, we rebate back to the funds. That's what we'll do again probably this year. If we go over, then we have to come back to you and ask for a further transfer of the funds to pay for those services.
Okay,
So Crossroads has no changes other than the salaries, the part that was added, and then the commodities, which are the plants and the potters.
And bottom line of what they spend this year versus last is the same apples and apples. It's just we're just doing the accounting at the front.
Correct. Correct.
all right, so are we good with Crossroads? Dave, I'm just putting you last, because, that's what we, Old Orchard,
They want to spend the most.
Old Orchard is the same, right? There's no
It's very much
additional
the same. The
requests.
600s are new. Again, that takes the place of the transfer in their chart of accounts. And then the commodities that are added in 724 commodities business district would have been in the 38 budget. 38 program in parks.
Okay, are we all right with that? Okay, Old Webster. It's not exactly the same, so can we just? Would it be I've reviewed it with Eric again, would it be beneficial for you all if we reviewed the changes that are expected in the Old Webster budget?
Go ahead.
Is it mostly the same as the other two, but then plus the parking lot? Or is it-
Exactly. So Old Webster has the 600s added, and then the commodities business district line for the things that Parks and Rec does to charge directly that fund. The one change that is in the proposed budget from the recommendation from the commission is the parking lot lease split for the first congregational lot on the back side of the church, it's extending on South Gore. It's used for employee parking. I think it was 10 years of a lease, maybe longer. I can't remember how the current lease, which is up this year, existed, but it was an 80-20 split. General fund paid 20%, Old Webster paid 80%. Obviously, Old Webster, appreciate it very much. It's paying attention to our fiscal 5-year plans and really sees the fund balance pressures they have and the size of the scale of their infrastructure and what they want to do for their district and such, and also their revenue constraints that pop in. Business districts just deal with their property tax basis rather than the sales tax basis. So they have asked you for some other changes, but the one that's embedded in here is the 50-50 split of the parking lot. I will also say that that is a subject to negotiation with the church. We don't know what they want for the parking lot, maybe significantly more than what they've been getting from us as the city. And so, the decision ultimately on what's the funding split between the funds and to pay for it comes down to you all. Discussion. You don't have to make a change to it. You can go back to 80-20, you can do the 50-50 here. It ultimately depends on what's the number we arrive at in the lease negotiation to that end. The two changes that were recommended from the commission, and certainly Chairman Smith can speak to that as he wishes, that were not included in the budget were to take Fran Sudicum's time as an independent contractor to do the minutes and support of Old Webster district, the meetings, which is $275 a month out of the, not pay it out of the Old Webster fund, but pay it out of the general fund. All the other districts pay it out of their fund. Her time, BBC time is covered by the general fund for Fran's portion of her service. And then the other one was on, think real quick here. Fran's plan, it was the holiday advertising. So we had about 2019, 2018 in that range, really started up a holiday advertising, maybe longer back than that. All three business districts kick in some funds to the general fund or to the buying of that package for radio and TV and newspaper. And Old Webster asked for the city. And I said, this is what they want to ask and see if the city's going to really step into advertising that way or not. The manager's budget does not include it, but that was a potential shift into the general fund. The other two districts still continue to have it there. So it's in the proposed budget still with Old Webster. It's $3,000. So
And that's
altogether,
just Old Webster's portion of that.
Old Webster's portion, the general fund already pays $10,000, and then you get about $18,000.
So did the other two districts also pay? So they're.
I can add a little extra color to.
Would you come a little forward so that,
Yes.
because we're
So
recording,
so to
thank you.
add a little extra color as to why we were originally proposing that the city pick up some additional share on a few of these line items that Eric presented. Was really our funding comes from property taxes as well as business licenses. In the most recent fiscal year, as I noted last week, our license funding dropped dramatically from what we had historically seen. And so, keeping in mind, trying to be at least close to revenue expense neutral, we were looking at ways that we could manage that while still providing services, keeping the district as a destination area. Since we made our original request and adjustments, it's come to light that 2020 fiscal 24 was and is expected to be an anomaly. And so we anticipate that business license funding will restore historic levels. Not entirely sure why that dropped, but again, well, we're conscious of it, we're keeping an eye on it.
But correct, 1 year there, it was 23, dropped from almost 40,000 to 23,000 business license revenue.
Historically,
It's most historically,
40K.
35, 40K, and so we should be able, looking at the businesses within the district, we should be able to expect reasonably 40,000 business license revenue. So,
And that's not the issue, we lost businesses, it's just the issue, somebody didn't pay their business license.
maybe collections, it could be many different factors, and we went back and looked at our accounting. Did we get all the money split the right way and that, because that was the first place I thought of, right? We just forgot to get Old Webster their piece of the pie, and it's right, and the auditors, I looked at that with us, so we haven't found that reason for 23. The problem is that when we look at our budget schedule, 23 informs the 25 estimate, right? right? Because you have no
Yeah.
data on 24 when you're building the
Is it
25
like
budget.
calendar year 23,
Fiscal 23
fiscal year 23,
informs fiscal 25, so now you
Yeah.
drop down to 20 some thousand,
And-
22, and
fiscal year to date 24, are we trending
we'll
higher?
trend back up to roughly. Again, assuming collections come in, you know.
And I had a question from the presentation, because with the new information, I wasn't sure if Fran's time and the holiday advertising was in or out. It sounded like maybe we asked to take it out, but then we put it back in.
Yeah, originally in the original presentation memo,
Yeah,
we were asking that the city would share in Fran's costs and cover at least the city portion of our requirements to maintain the city requirements. But in light of the new information, our official budget proposal, the district will continue to cover Fran's cost, and we will continue to cover the advertising costs.
Okay.
So the only really cost sharing arrangement we're requesting is the parking.
Is
And-
that written in the budget area?
That's in the proposed budget, so we
Yes.
ended up with, the district came back to where, sort of match the manager, because the revenue was able, we were able to see, we can expect that $40,000 mark, right? So I think we found a way there in that. It is, the interfund mix there, just ultimately, as costs keep going up, not seeing great revenue increases happening across the three districts, so it speaks to the fit of the other issue.
And I would say the request to get to 50% from where we were 20 is actually to put it in line with the other employee parking lots that are currently closed.
Which again, just to clarify, that's only, the only other one that the city pays in on lease on is Moody's, so Old Webster has only 2 bed, 6 bed and stuff, so. The only
Okay,
other
yeah,
lots.
so to be clear, just for the sake of time, what our decision is whether or not we would like to move to that 50-50 split.
do we have enough information to do that if we don't know what the lease is gonna be, or we're just agreeing in principle that?
I think this is one of those times where we're agreeing in principle and we'll have to come back with the actual number when it
Yeah.
arrives.
So there would be an amendment.
We'll have
And when the
to
time
make a budget
comes.
amendment for the
Yeah.
actual cost of the lease, it's gonna go up from what it has been, I think we're entering into those conversations. But that's been our
And we can
assumption.
do
But this-
historical numbers.
But us making a decision about that then at least gives them a little bit of certainty as they move forward into the fiscal year.
And we would start it with the current lease hasn't expired yet.
Current lease expires at the end of this calendar year, so this budget is going to need to be amended at some point to get us to
But the 50-50, if we agreed to that, would start for July
January.
1. Or
July 1 of this year, yes.
And we don't know what the,
We're in negotiation, and Pastor Newton is on sabbatical, but we,
I got a phone.
it has not been, all things are pressing, but the negotiation has not been, we gotta go get the lease signed off.
then we own our own lots in Crossroads.
We own at least 2
Orchard,
lots in every of the 3 businesses. So 2 in Crossroads, we own 2 in Old Orchard, 1 each side of Big Bend. There is garage, and then I think we own at least all of Glencoe from the railroad. Mara, I'm looking at you to make sure I don't forget anything that we own.
Behind the bank.
Behind the bank, thank you. Yeah, behind the banks. So the Moody and the Congregational Church lot, 2 church lots, to call it, represent the only place where the city has stepped in and matching in with the district in some way to provide a dedicated employee parking space that's not owned outright.
All right, so
I would just like to know what it's gonna be instead of, and you know, we're doing 80-20 now. Is that correct?
80-20 in the current budget. basically.
with the current lease.
Right, 2 seconds. Budget.
This is just a kind of a not a one-time thing, but once we get the levels back up, it'll go back to 80-20 possibly.
It can be split any year the way you
Okay.
choose.
This is
So
the agreement, not
So
for the
this is
whole
just
lease,
for
but
now.
just for this.
That's correct. We have operated as much as the whole lease room to have those conversations, but you can change it at your discretion.
And how long has it been 80-20?
At least 10 years, I think, that we've had that lot. Mara, I'm looking 10
Which
congregation.
the congregational, it's been long before me, so 15 years maybe?
And have we had increases every year or other year or?
During the time that I was there, working with it, no, we didn't have some significant instances. We had them for a number of, 2 or 3 years at a time, and it stayed pretty steady.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. For all the transaction here. Land leases. Employee parking. Congregational lot. At 50% is $514, so 6,000, so, you know, the full cost is about $12,000 currently. And the community lot is at, 50% is about $9,000 right now.
So. But still, it's a yes or no question. It's not a, we have,
So if it stays, the lease rate stays the same on renewal, we're talking about the cost share, the city cost share going from 2,400 to 6,000.
thank you. So, what shall we say?
$3,600.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the 80, 20, 50, 50 that, yeah.
It's helpful to talk.
I think it's,
I'm fine.
and if we can revisit it for next year.
My only question is, do we put it in effect for the fiscal year, or do we wait until we renegotiate the next lease?
We can do either. I would suggest that we act on their request, which is for the fiscal year.
It's in the budget at the old rate, so it's gonna, as I said, you're gonna have to come back and deal with that line item anyways when we get the lease signed.
Okay.
Right,
yeah.
so I have 3 nods
Yes.
and, okay, all right. It was worth the wait, huh?
When we're down to 5, do we still need 4 nods?
No, I just was counting the
No,
number.
I'm
of
just
people.
like, just as a matter of.
It's a majority,
nods.
it's a majority,
of who's here.
it's a majority of presence. Yeah. Feel your power.
They both gone for the whole night.
Increase by.
It was a late, yes. The answer to that is yeah. Okay, so we are finished with these. So what I will do is work with each of you to draft board and commission letters. We will try and present these in June, assuming that they can get turned around in time. If we do it, we probably should have. Now that I thought of this. Were we gonna go to our new boards and commissions in June?
Yeah.
Does the new person want to deliver this message?
It's mostly good news,
The-
isn't it?
All right, then we'll do that way. Okay. All right. I gotta find the right agenda here. I have way too much paper. Okay, we're finished with our topic. Appointments to boards and commissions. All right, so I'm gonna start with what we didn't get to last meeting. Katie Cahoon, interviewed for the Old Orchard Special Business District.
Yes.
Yes. Matt Brody,
Brody, I guess.
thank
Mhm.
you, for sustainability. We have 2 vacancies, so he interviewed last time, and then Mary
Yes.
Bargeron did this.
Yeah, so that
Yes.
was all.
Yes to both, okay.
Yes.
Jerry Rosen, wants to be the, chamber representative. That's, I think, sort of pro forma. They send us who we want to do.
Do we miss tab?
I'm coming back to it.
Okay.
Alex Elmstead wants to re-up at the Arts Commission, and the chair very much supports that, and I as liaison do as well.
Great. Yes.
Business Development Commission, Tammy Bem, is another reappointment. She served 1 term. Stacy Swiderska is 1 term as well. Reappointments there.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Library Board, Dana Cooley and Fred Toll, chair and staff both support that, and as liaison as I support their reappointments as well.
Great.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. We're moving along here, Katie. Sustainability, Karen Anderson and both Amana Anwar would like to be reappointed, and both of them have served 1 term or a portion of term.
Yeah, they're both great.
Okay. And then we have some of that. All right, Traffic Advisory Commission, I'm gonna ask that we hold on the reappointments. But I know that we have an opening, and Eric Toman had interviewed for that position. Would we like to? Do you all remember him from last time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Staff and commissioner, staff and chair.
Yes, and then we're gonna revisit at our next meeting, if you all don't mind, the reappointments, which we can, I think, handle then in part because our liaison is not here And we've asked that the liaisons begin to weigh in on these things, so,
How many positions on
Which will be
that?
June.
yes, which will be to. How many positions on TAC are
Are open.
open? Hold on, it's right here. One vacancy, so we're filling the vacancy and there's an alternate open.
Correct.
And then we have some reappointments.
Thank you.
So we would have room to do all the.
All the
reappointment and
reappointments,
the new
correct, correct. But again, our new system says we want input from
Yeah, sure.
liaisons
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so. Okay. Did I forget anything?
Did we,
Yeah, so we'll officially do those in regular meeting. I think we are finished with our work session then. If we now we get to transfer, everyone gets up and moves. And we will go to All right, welcome to our meeting for May 21st. We welcome questions and comments, ideas from persons in attendance. Members of the audience may comment when recognized. And we'd like for you, if you'd like to comment, to fill out a card like this. And if you would just, if you filled it out, hand it to Karen here at the end of the podium. And I will recognize you at the appropriate time. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, and we'll ask you to state your name and address when you begin your commenting portion, and that will be really very quickly here in just a moment. So thank you. And then if you're online, we'll ask you to use the raise your hand function at that time. All right, we'll start with the roll call.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss,
Here.
Councilmember Franklin is absent, Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander is absent, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Here.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer.
Here. All right, we will start right away with our remarks of community and visitors. And the first card I have is from Daniel O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill, if you'll just come to the microphone, please.
Your Honor, members of the City Council, I appreciate letting me speak to you this evening. I live at, we bought the property in Webster Groves at 604 North Laclede Station Road. A little bit of history. My father, he's 96. He's a 60-year Webster Groves resident. He lives in Barbergene Court. He doesn't drive. We take care of him. And I spend a whole lot of time at his house taking care of him and driving him around. My son is 34 years old. He was born with birth defects, and he's a great kid. He's risen to his level of achievement. He's got a full-time job. He's had 10 years at the St. Louis Zoo, and he's just a great kid. And he met a wonderful lady who's also challenged, and they're planning to get engaged. So it all started, we were walking the dog, and we walked by this distressed eyesore property at 604 North Laclede Station Road, and there was a for sale sign on it. So I talked to my wife and said, wouldn't this be great? I could take care of my dad, walk across the property line, work on the house, walk back, take care of him, and then my son could live there with his fiance once they get married. So he said, we took our life savings, we basically borrowed money, and we made an offer on it, and we got the house. We were thrilled. Okay, so then we started cleaning up the yard and the grass and euonymus and the invasive honeysuckle, and it was just a total mess. The fence had euonymus all over and was falling down. We made our plans. I drew up the plans, submitted for permit, the $40, and on my, filled out all the paperwork. The lady said, I have everything there. On the way home, she called me up and said, who's gonna live at the house? And I said, well, my son. She said, well, then I can't give you a building permit. And I said, well, why is that? Because you as the owner have to live in the house. So I said, well, that might be a pain, but since I'm over there all the time, my son will stay at our house and I'll move in. Okay, so then 14 working days later, May the 7th, I got an email stating that I needed to hire a general contractor to get a permit. Webster Groves required the homeowner to occupy the house, which is telling me that I can't work on my own house. I have 16 years experience building new houses and apartments, 14 years in construction management, and yet I can't get a permit to work on my own house. I think that the rules of requirement 20.362.1 were designed to do something other than prevent somebody from working on their own house for their own son. He's my only son to live there, and I need help getting a permit so I can start working on my house. This is costing me money and interest and insurance and taxes, and I'm not sure where to go from here. I was told that if I signed an affidavit, had it notarized, and lived there for a year, I could do the work on it. But if I moved out before that year, I'd have to pay for a special invasive inspection where they would cut into the walls after all the Webster Groves inspections were done. And that doesn't sound right. And then the other way was to become a general contractor, was to pay $75 to Webster Groves. And then also I would have to buy a $1,300 insurance policy. I'd rather put that money into the house and help improve the property.
Thank you. Unfortunately, your 3 minutes are up. And
Okay.
we don't typically respond, but someone will be back in touch with you, I promise, to hear the rest of what you have to say.
Pardon me?
I'll be back in touch with you to hear the rest of what you have to say.
That would be great. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you all.
All right, our next speaker's card is from Vicky, I think it's Singer. You write in cursive. People don't do that much anymore. No, don't be. It's nice to see.
Please tell me when you start your timer so I can start a timer at the same time. Okay, I'm ready when you are. Can you tell me when you start the timer so I know when we're doing on the 3? Ready? Go. All right. Good evening. I'm Vicky Singer. I'm a resident here in Webster Groves. I am also a disabled parent to a toddler who will tell you that she is 3 soon. I'm also an accessibility professional who has the honor of working at Washington University in St. Louis. As I have been looking at Webster Groves comprehensive plan and have filled out all the surveys, I do promise I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and bring some moments of possible issue to the council's attention as they're thinking about the budget and moving forward. As the journey to Webster Groves is moving forward, I want to acknowledge that part of the guiding principles are inclusion and diversity and equity. Now, we all know this is very important. However, accessibility is very often left out of DEI. I'm a disabled parent. I also use a wheelchair. I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. I have cerebral palsy. I could not have used my wheelchair to get into City Hall tonight to engage in this civic action if I had not been able to be ambulatory myself. Given the moment that I take my daughter to Larson Park, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, when I take her in my chair, when I have a bad day with my cerebral palsy, that I cannot open the doors to the bathroom to be able to get her inside. As the council is thinking about installing swings and other equipment for disabled people and children in their spaces, I hope that they are also taking into consideration that accessibility is living, not just play. So access to doors, having changing tables that are rated for a higher weight rating for disabled children who may need to be able to be changed, water fountains that don't require push buttons or having sensors, things like that that are taking consideration into this long-term plan of Webster Groves being this inclusive community that the council strives towards. I will also acknowledge that as a wheelchair user, there are many sidewalks in this area which are very difficult to navigate. As somebody who loves Old Orchard and Annex, let me tell you, I have almost flipped my wheelchair in the lovely, pretty drama faces that are imprinted into the sidewalk. So I ask that the council work towards finding contractors that are very familiar with accessibility, not just we're ADA compliant. The ADA is the floor. It was always meant to be the floor of the law. It was always meant to be above and beyond. And if Webster Groves wants to continue to be dedicated to this inclusion, I encourage them to look for contractors and for people who are looking to go above and beyond to a truly inclusive community that is moving forward as a whole. I'm under my 3 minutes. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your.
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna go put my toddler to bed. See you later.
Good night. All right then. Next, is there any business, new business from any members of council, city attorney, city manager? All right, then we are going to continue and begin our discussion of the budget for this evening. We had our budget presentation last.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't have any hands up, so. just so
Oh,
we
yes,
know
thank
that-
you.
Make sure nobody else.
Yes, is
wanted
there
to-
anyone in attendance who would like to make a public comment? The city clerk is taking good care of you. All right, no hands
good.
are raised. Thank you, though, for that reminder. Right, we had our initial budget presentation at our last meeting. We have some budget amendments to consider. We also, I know I have some questions after having combed through our budget book a little bit more. But if the council would like, and this is okay with the council, we'll just begin with some of the amendments that have been presented to us. Some of them were circulated as part of the backup that we received for this meeting, and then others, I believe, are going to be offered here today. I'll just remind everyone, as a matter of procedure, if we're going to have budgets to the amendment, we should do it this meeting or the next meeting. Waiting until the second meeting in June when we have that final vote on the budget really makes it hard on everyone to get everything pulled together for the beginning of the fiscal year. So I would encourage to the degree possible that we get those amendments done tonight or in the next meeting. If you offer an amendment tonight, we could vote on it. We don't have to vote on it. As we all are aware, we're missing 2 members. And if for your own personal reasons, if you'd like to discuss your amendment, but wait to vote until more members are here, we can do that as well. So we can be a little bit flexible on whether we go ahead to passage of amendments or whether we table them to be taken up again at our next meeting. All right, Eric, I think that's enough of a preamble here. I would, by the way, like to say thank you to Eric before we get started and to Dr. Peoples, who helped us write some of these and get them put together based on council feedback. So yes, now I really will let you begin.
We have placed packets, amendments for 5 in the packet. The last 4. Thank you. I'm getting my microphone. Thank you, Councilmember. The last 4 that were submitted are all prepared. They weren't in the packet on Thursday that went out to the public. So if you wish to offer them, if you have one of the 4, the last 4 there that are on the list, just when we get to that spot, say yes, you do, and I'll hand it out to you and we can go from there. And then you can, again, you don't have to take votes on these tonight. If you just want to queue up a conversation for next week or next meeting, excuse me, you can do so with your members. But ultimately, if you are intending to have a vote taken, the returning members know. I will need a motion in a second. Then when we get to the roll call, I'll call the roll and we'll record the votes from these amendments. So. And the budget amendment forms are available if you need. If you have any on the go amendments, then usually it's best if we just take a moment. We can talk about whether you're looking to do and we'll figure out the exact language to put in to make the changes. So. Good.
I think we're good to go.
All
Everybody
right.
good? All right, thank you.
Well, we'll start off in true fashion in the general fund. So general fund number 1 is from Councilmember Bliss. Just briefly to explain the amendment, it adds the position of planner in Department 5, Planning and Development. Total cost and the object codes in the 600s in planning would be $99,275.29.
You asking me?
So you need now
To move the
to
amendment.
move the amendment, yeah, and then we'll have a second. So
Okay.
you would move for the
So I
adoption of,
move to adopt the budget amendment
CF1.
that allows for a planner.
you can call it GF1 if you'd like.
Oh, I don't have that.
Oh,
GF1, please.
CF1. Yeah, second. Second from Mr. Smith.
Oh, thank you.
okay, so it's been offered and seconded, correct? And so typically then you would take a minute or two and explain why you'd like us to adopt this amendment?
Well, I do have questions about the description here on this
So
item.
Director Perry, would you like to join us up here, please?
I'm taking Mara's request very seriously. I know we've had a planner and then who we, from my point of view, I saw a lot, being on the plan commission at the time. He helped quite a bit. It gave you a chance to maybe focus on other duties at that time. So first of all, just generally speaking, do you see this additional planner going back to that similar situation, at least just from a surface point of view?
Yes, would definitely take over a lot of the day-to-day, some of the things that would give us time to work on code amendments like the ADUs and other things. And then would help in general to spread out the requests that we get on a daily basis of zoning, what can I do with a fence? How do I do this process? All of that used to be spread out between the 2 of us. And now a lot of times if someone needs a question answered, it can take me 2 or 3 days before I can get to them. And it just, sometimes the timing is off because meeting dates, deadlines, things like that. It would also mean less evening meetings because we used to divvy those out. And so correct. There might be some other things, the comprehensive plan would be a great opportunity to have an additional staff member to help out with that too.
On the functions here, positions 1 through 9, just kind of are straight. Conducts technical research, maintains and administers, and then we get down to 10, and it's about assisting in those roles. So who does 1 through 9 now? Just the straight off conducts research, maintains, administers. Is that one person doing that? Is that staff? Is it you? Are you doing all of these items on
Right
this list?
now, I'm doing all of those
Okay.
items.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think that's all I have.
May I look at that for a second?
Yeah.
So just to clarify, you heard in there, some of us really do want to get to some of these code amendments.
Mhm.
And we just had somebody talk to us about occupancy, right? And what that means and how we might straighten that out. So I'm just trying to figure out of these 9 sort of, what you just said is you'll sort of spread it apart. I'm a little greedy.
Mhm.
Are there things that, you can give to that person so you can spend the time? I'm greedy for your time to get some of these code
Oh, wait,
amendments.
so I'm sorry, and maybe I'm misunderstanding. I thought that that's that's what the planner position shows.
Correct.
Yes, so the planner takes care of all of these things. I thought you were asking the question of who's doing it right now. Right
I did
now,
ask that. Who is
I'm
it right
doing
now?
all
Yeah.
of that. So if we had a planner,
You'd be able to give this up.
I can
Yes.
give those
Got it.
things
Okay.
over.
Now okay, thank you. Maybe I was misunderstanding that. It very well could have been that, Mark.
No, no,
So-
that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That helps considerably. All right, thank you.
Okay,
I just need
so-
clarification.
Those are the only questions I have. I mean, can we move to approve that now, or is there more discussion?
Well,
I have,
we have to ask everybody else to see if
Right,
there's
right.
more, but yes.
That's what I would,
I have a question.
Procedural.
Is this in your presentation for budget, was this particular FTE part of your budget request?
So
Did you, I can't remember. Did
It's
you
not in
have it?
the book, but it was, we would like to include it.
Ms.
on-
Perry requested 2 positions this budget year. I supported one of those within my budget. I did
Okay.
not support this position being included in
Oh,
the
that's what I
budget.
wanted clarification. Okay. So let me see that list.
I gave it back to you, didn't I? Okay.
I have more copies of that.
Oh.
You guys don't have to pass
But
around.
we're
the same
sharing so
copy.
nicely.
I mean, I appreciate that.
So are we using a FTE that we have in reserve, or this is a brand new FTE?
it was a frozen
Just a
position.
frozen
Correct.
position.
Not in addition to
Thank
headcount.
you.
Okay.
Using it.
And you'll be able to hand off this entire,
Yes.
okay.
I could hand off Board of Adjustment, half of Plan Commission, the smaller things, all the little CUPs they could take care of, fence permits. The list goes on and on. Just
Yeah.
the planner used to handle a large bulk of work and did not just a typical 40-hour work week, but also did evening meetings, stayed and helped to work through things and did all of that.
And then you have more time to do,
Code amendments, just in general, dealing with problems. So a lot of times if my planner would make a determination and then someone would be upset about it, they would then come to me and we'd talk through whether I supported the planner or whether I could find another way for them to get through an issue. And right now, a lot of it's been, I don't have a planner to send a violation letter for something that then someone can appeal to me. Now it's just me. So it's shortening their ability to kind of get through some of the steps to be able to try to address issues.
so to create an efficiency in your department?
It would definitely create an efficiency in the department.
Okay, thank you.
Would it be right to say that this would help with being more responsive, like more timely responses, which I can hear you say is important to you in your
Yes.
office to do, split up some of the commission work and free up some of your time for the comprehensive plan, which is an immediate project, but also ongoing when the years we don't have the comprehensive plan, that there's still plenty of work to go around for you and the planner.
In past years, I used to do 2, 3, or 4 code amendments and they were substantial code amendments. And I haven't been able to do a code amendment in the last 2 years that's been anything other than something quite small. Prior to that, we redid the traffic, the parking code. We redid the residential code for stormwater. We started that. But the idea that we could work on some of these other things like ADUs, they've been put on hold just because it's just,
A time commitment.
we want to deal with the applicants. If we have an applicant from the outside coming in, we focus on them first to get their project done.
What type of impact would Prop W have on the planning department?
We would be reviewing those permits. So typically the planner would have reviewed it against the zoning. If there's something that we shouldn't have anything that needs to go before Plan Commission, but would have probably reviewed things to go before Architectural Review Board, make sure it's correct. If there's any plating that needs to be done. So when we did the fire station, we did the research for the plat information and then helped work on getting the plat to make that all one piece of property. And then reviewed the zoning to make sure that it was laid out correctly on the site. And then helped with some of the Architectural Review Board that was not required for the city, but just to get some feedback on it. All of that was essentially done by the planner. But then after that, the permits are reviewed by my staff. So my plan reviewer reviews it against building code. The building commissioner's in on that. And then we do all the inspections. So our inspectors, when we have big projects like the school district, they give us a heads up when they have things coming. And we try to set aside time so that their plans don't sit for too long so they can meet the deadlines. We just reviewed one very quickly for them because they need to start it the week after school, or essentially they need to start it this week. And we issued it to them 2 weeks early. And then they're going to be working at the high school on a pretty big project inside through the summer. So it's similar to that. We like to set aside time for these big projects, make sure all the staff can review them while still not letting the smaller projects fall by the wayside.
This question is for Eric. So what impact would this be on the budget as you present it?
The revenue is, we're in surplus by $26, so this would require a fund, the reuse of reserves, one-time monies to be able to fund going forward. So unless there's an offsetting revenue amendment forthcoming, so.
Say it one more time.
So you're in surplus right now without this position at $26.
Right.
So adding 99,275, you've got $99,250 into deficit, not including the one-time costs as well. So you'd have about $250,000 to take out of the fund balance to use to pay for those costs this fiscal year in 25. And then obviously, as we talk about sustainable revenue and sustainable expenses, it does create a bit of a chasm there. It's not a large one by any means, but it is a change to that methodology that we've been looking at.
The point is, it's ongoing.
What's that?
The point is, it's ongoing.
Yes, exactly. Yes, this is ongoing, so there's ongoing revenue. Should we meet our targets, it's going to meet the budget by $26. Pretty tight, area there, so.
Go ahead. Dr. Peoples, I am curious as to why you didn't include this position in your original budget.
Certainly. So the planning department is certainly busy. I do not disagree with Ms. Perry's assessment of that. So I certainly supported the one position. When I consider overall organizational needs and where we would need another position, if I were in the position of requesting another position, I would have asked for one in IT. And so my thoughts on that. So again, planning is incredibly busy. What I'm concerned with is we're not necessarily doing things different, which is where I would say perhaps an IT position. Ms. Perry does a ton of work on magnets and other things. And so we've got to be able to get to the point where we can start transferring more of the work to Magnet, figuring out how we're transitioning some of those online processes. But just the daily work itself, I do think that there's some additional efficiencies that could be created. And there may be a position that's needed. What I'm not sure of, is it a planner position? And so in conversations with Mayor Arnold, what I would suggest, and now that we have the deputy city manager here, as we look at project management and trying to figure out how we can help, whether it's balance that workload, what are the things we're doing that we don't need to do? And again, people are working incredibly hard. And then some of it is managing expectations, and you weren't on council and we've had some of these previous conversations. But when I hear that it's taking us 48 hours to do an inspection, I understand residents want them the moment they request it, but 48 hours is not a long delay. I also understand, Mrs. Perry saying sometimes it takes 2 to 3 days to get back with that review and to get back. I understand to the person requesting it, that may be a lot, but in the scheme of doing business, to be able to turn that time frame around, there's not a large delay. So some of it is managing our expectations internally. Now, having said that, I want to provide a high quality service, and we do. So I do think that there's some improvements needed within planning, certainly. I just don't know that this is the answer. So hopefully if council were to approve the budget that I submitted, giving the additional staff person, that would give some breathing room so we could do some further assessment. So that's my pitch. I certainly would not be offended if council did go ahead and support the position. But again, I would be looking to how are we doing things differently? What is that body of work? Because what I hear is getting things off the plate, which is extremely important, getting some of that code work done. But then what? What are we doing when we're stabilized and that backlog is caught up? Do we still need all of that position? Absolutely.
All right, other questions or comments? I guess my question then to you, Pam, is would you like to go ahead and vote with just the 5 of us here? Or you want to wait till all 7 are here?
Well, next time there will be just.
Oh,
6
that's right.
people.
I forgot. Okay.
So I would like to just, since this is my only amendment, I would like to see it through.
All right. If there's no further discussion, then we can go ahead and,
On adoption of amendment GF1,
oh, that's right. You're going to do this.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin is absent, Councilmember Smith. No. Councilmember Alexander, that's absent, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hessmeyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Arnold.
I'm going to say yes.
4-1 is adopted. Moving on to the next amendment in the council, in the general fund again, general fund number 2, offered by Councilmember Hickson Shepherd, is an increase of just over $1,081. Just quick stop reference. We put cents in so you all know the dollars and cents. It'll actually be a round whole dollar because the budget system doesn't allow us to budget down cents. So, so you know, so the number goes amount a little different. GF2 deals with the judge. In the past years, the municipal judge has been considered an employee. Judge Whitney, that was at his request. So we always put a COLA in with Judge Whitney's pay all those years. Judge Larris, as most municipal judges are, is an independent contract. It's a 1099 employee to the city. Finance generally does not increase contracts unless the contract has a written increase. Judge Larris has no contract with the city. It is your determination on the salary. And so no COLA was included in the budget, the proposed budget. So this amendment would offer the 5% COLA that is built in the proposed budget to the municipal judge.
All right.
So I'd like to, do I need to discuss it first or just call for the adoption?
Move for the
adoption.
So I would move for the adoption of amendment GF2.
Second.
All right.
And I think that
You wanna
Eric
add anything?
has
Yeah.
explained it very well. It was just to include the municipal judge in the COLA that all the staff are getting.
Is there any discussion? Since we're talking about the judge, I am going to take this moment to ask, I don't, probably both the city manager and the director of finance, assistant city manager. One of the things that we've dealt with over the last period of time has been a backlog with municipal courts. And I looked at this budget and asked the question, and you were kind enough to give me some information about that backlog and what would happen. Can you just tell us where we are with the backlog? And are there more resources that we need to deal with that at this point in time?
The answer is yes. There are more resources. Not sure of what those are. So thank you for asking, Madam Mayor. So this week, there's actually a conference that our court staff are at, and it is the annual conference meant specifically for administrators. Be in a better position to answer that question after next week when they return. We are currently in a hiring process for a court clerk at this point in time. We have one. So that is compounding the backlog that was already there. But we're also having conversations with the prosecuting attorneys as well, right?
Yeah, the thunderstorm's rolling in.
Wowzers. We're having conversations with prosecuting attorneys as well in terms of the backlog, how we can increase the recommendations, move some of those through. Mr. Peterson and I also had a meeting about 2 weeks ago with Judge Lawrence as we talked about having, for lack of a better word, an amnesty day of sorts. Many of these cases are multiple years old. They date way back, just for the rest of the folks, they date way back before COVID. So it's really, a lot of these folks, they're not in the area, it's transient, so we're holding on to cases that people aren't going to show up. So we're trying to figure out how to process those through. So a long answer for I'll have more information on that after next week, but there are resources needed.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members, I would just add briefly on resources and process improvement there is in the one-time human resources sub-program. There's training and education. There's 2 lines there for both legal and for courts. Dedicated a couple thousand into process improvement. As we look at that, how do we move data? That's a big part of that process improvement. It's all on paper. So literally people move with the data. Of course, if we want to capture a person here at court night, there can't be anyone in the window because their court file is still up here with the judge.
Yeah.
They haven't typed into a computer yet, which is what they spent all day Thursday doing after court, to give you a sense of just the machinations of it.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Any other questions? on this one?
All right, then I think we are,
Happy to call for the vote.
all right, then we will call for the vote, please.
On adoption of amendment GF2, Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander is absent. Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Hessmeyer. Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin is absent. Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
5-1. Capital Improvement Plan, CIP 1 is the next amendment in the order, offered by Councilmember Hickson Shepherd. CIP currently includes an FY 27, which is a non-fiscal item for this year's budget. It's a non-fiscal policy item. It includes a UTV response vehicle in the fire department's capital improvement program. And this amendment would remove that from the fiscal year 27 and from the CIP plan as a stated policy to not pursue that purchase.
All right.
So I would call
You
move
for
for
the
the
adoption.
adoption of amendment CIP 1.
Second.
And I know it's not in this fiscal year. We've just got a lot of capital things coming up and some big costs. And this was one that I thought wasn't as imperative as some of the others. So that's
This-
where the amendment is.
This can be put back in the budget for next budget year. if
Sure,
needed.
sure. It can be put back in, but it also can be taken out later. And
Yeah.
part of
It's
what
not
I am
urgent.
interested in over time from the chief is, it's not a question you have to answer right now because it's gonna be when we ask, what is it used for and how often it's used, it was sort of, to be honest, a vague answer because I don't think you've been counting in the way that you might count. And so one of the things I would like for us to see is to really understand how frequently this would be used if it were to be purchased. And whether it comes out and goes back in or it comes out later, that
Right,
we
we
still
want
want
that,
that
yeah.
data. And I think the chief would like to comment, so we're going to give him the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Just a couple examples. I know I touched on it last time. We have 20 parks in the city. Access to some parks for patients can be very difficult. And so based on, we're not getting our ambulances back deep in some of the parks. So just getting a patient who has a major injury back to the ambulance is critical. I think our Swiftwater rescue call we had a week ago today. We had a couple of UTVs from the area that were helping get closer to the water to along this river's edge. I think with the number of activities we have in the city with events such as Jazz Fest and such, just having a vehicle that is more accessible on the EMS front is important. One of the options that I shared with Dr. Peoples was firehouse grants are very very good with giving grants for things like this, so I would pursue a grant first. And I think even a public safety joint venture for fire and police, where we could share UTV would have some great benefit for the services we provide. So that's kind of the sales pitch there. I think it's one of those, I'm happy to track the potential of the uses that we would have. I know we've had a couple saves in parks on cardiac events, but it's still a trek sometimes to get that stretcher back to the ambulance. So that'd be the primary reason.
Thank you.
I do have a question. What is the stated policy of the city to not pursue such a purchase?
I think it's just saying like, if we take it out of the CIP, that means that it's a stated policy. That's
It
not. my
it
language.
suggests that the chief would not just put it back in next year.
Yeah.
Got it.
Or a year after that.
Or the year after that, right?
Also, Madam Councilmember, we would pull it out of the fiscal future projections, so you wouldn't have that cost built into
Right.
what will those years bear, so. When we look at.
So let's say it needed to be replaced, how would that
Be
occur?
put back in the budget?
No,
We don't-
the actual item needed to be replaced.
We don't have one.
We don't
It's a new one.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. It's hard to keep track with all the things.
I don't know why, well,
So,
I don't know why we wouldn't get one.
so right now it's just a neutral impact to the budget
For this year.
for this year
Yeah.
Yes.
and for next year.
Yes. And I mean, if we had grant funding, like that would change my take on this. If we wanted grant funding and share it with police, even better. This is not like a hill that I'm gonna die on.
If council did want to remove it, and as the chief said, excuse me, if there were grant funding available, I would bring that back to council. We would not miss an opportunity. If there is an opportunity, we would share that.
I mean, should we leave it in, pursue the grant funding, so it's like not gone from the radar and then reassess it as we get closer?
Well, I believe the chief was talking about a hypothetical. I don't know that there's actually grant funding available at this time.
I have not applied for a grant for this yet.
No,
That would be the,
I understand,
option.
yeah, no. But do we leave it on the books so that we don't lose sight of that as a possibility
It's-
with a star that we'd only get it if we had funding? for it?
Absolutely. We can add that to the budget notes.
Maybe-
It's a couple of fiscal years out, so we can always
Okay.
revisit it. It can also
Okay.
be pushed further into the
Yeah.
capital plan. And to your point, I mean, our capital plan, the whole reason, certainly not to speak for you, but because it's not supported, but our capital plan is really, really full for the next
Mhm.
future years. And so that was the consideration.
Yeah.
So you get to decide whether we want to vote this in or out. I will say whichever way it goes, if it stays in, certainly I think it remains on the radar as something that, to be honest, I'm not 100% convinced on at this point, and I'd really like some collection of data. So if it doesn't, if it stays in now, you know, we may be, we're probably going to have the same conversation next year, and I hope we have more than anecdotal evidence of its need, of our need for it.
and that's easy to track.
And Eric, if we do pull it out, it'll just modify our 5-year projection.
It would modify the 5-year projection, yes. And then if you did, that's obviously in the capital improvement section, the tab, you'll see the table that's laid out there and then the projections on the 5-year plan. If you did follow through on Councilwoman Hickson Shepherd's conversation with the grant, your amendment would be to move it from the fire capital improvement fund down to the grant line. So it's pulling which funding source. Remember, the capital improvement program has about 6 funding sources that flow into it. And so you're realigning the funding source with what your preferred funding source would be in the future. So.
And then just while we're kind of talking on this, I mean, just kind of philosophically, I wanna, like, I don't think it's a bad thing that we have vehicles from other municipalities helping us out and then we help others out with our swift water. Like, I don't want to feel like we have to recreate all of the tools within just Webster Groves Fire Department. Like, I think it's important that we be well staffed and well equipped, but I think it's okay if, like, you know, Brentwood has a UTV and we don't, if we work together that way.
Do we know who does and who doesn't?
Yeah, so Brentwood and Maplewood do. And their staffing is even less than ours. So whenever they need the UTV, they pull a fire truck out of service to take the UTV. So in essence, we're down an auto aid apparatus when that happens. But at the moment, the UTV is requested, and that's why we have a need for that. So we could request a UTV right now, and Brentwood or Maplewood would auto aid us that vehicle. if they have the manpower and they're not on another call in the fire truck or ambulance.
But if their UTV is with us, that means that they can't run their fire and truck. Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
They're using the staff.
At the same time.
So Shrewsbury, Crestwood, Glendale, Kirkwood,
I can't speak on Kirkwood, but the other three do not.
Sunset Hills.
I'm not sure about that.
How does our staffing work then for using this?
So that'd be, we would probably follow a similar model, or we would we have enough chiefs around, like myself and Chief Banger, to get it where it needs to be. Especially if we were after hours, I'm close, so I can pick it up. So if we have a need for it, there's an immediacy of it.
Okay, so we're not suggesting, so.
We're not
we'll have an
over
Ambulance
hiring.
conversation later, but new ambulance means more people.
There were a couple avenues on the new ambulance.
No, I understand that,
yeah.
but if we are gonna put a second ambulance in the field, that means more people.
Yep.
Does the
No,
UTV
no, ma'am.
at all?
We would
Okay.
not over hire a staff for a UTV.
Okay,
event.
just wanted to make sure I understood completely.
Similar to the boat, right?
Yes, exactly. That's a great way to look at it. We use our current members that are on duty for the immediacy of the water call, and then we backfill their positions on the truck while we're on the water emergency.
And what about like training? I'm assuming there's no special gear. Are there any other costs besides the vehicle itself that we should like?
There's an
Be-
extinguisher on it for a small fire to get somewhere, and then there's that holds a Stokes basket, which is what we would use to get a patient on a bumpy area. It's a better, safer ride to get them back to the stretcher. It's an item that I could see us utilizing in the city because of the city events we have and the number of parks we have for accessibility. And it's an item I would pursue. I put in the capital so it's on the radar, pursuing a grant to go fund it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
So we can vote on the amendment. If you would like to withdraw, you can do that.
Do I need to do an amendment to just add the note that like it would be, maybe it's already in there, that it would be grant funded? Like, is that an amendment if it's not moving money?
Well, I have one question to make that decision. So we're looking at the budget impact or if we really need it?
Both.
Both.
Yeah. And I'm still not super convinced that we need it either. Like, I understand the rationale, but we would want more council discussions, I think, but financially, it's not going to impact this year. And if we had grant dollars, it wouldn't impact it anyway, unless we had to replace it or something.
And if we look at this in, for year 26, we can still make that decision to pull it out of 27.
Yeah, because it's in 27, yeah.
So Madam Mayor and members, yes, there's a couple different ways to get there. You could do an official amendment. Right now, it's booked into the capital sales tax for part of the funding. So you're going to see it in the 5-year plan, taking $27,000 or so of that funding in 27. You could make the amendment to move it to grants. That's not going to hit any of our revenue lines that we would get.
Even though we don't have grant funding yet.
Even though we don't have grant funding, you're saying, we do that with grants often, the park grant. We expect to get it this year. We expect to get a grant of a certain type in the future year. So we marketed the grant out to that lane to start showing the project progression. Now, that said, that means in 27, if you don't get the grant, now you're in a case of what do you do without that funding source? And you can come back and revise then if you wish and move it to a different funding source. You also can do nothing, let it stand and move it to a grant when at a time you actually come up with grant availability and want to pursue the purchase of it.
And just make like a text note in the CIP that is the intention.
In reality, the CIP plan is, in this point in time, you get a 5-year perspective. And then, of course, as you know, everything falls apart across the year and now we have to do the roof and not the carpets, right? So then we readjust all that and we come back in the next point in time next year, and some of these lines may have moved. We may have said, okay, we
Yeah.
got to pull this out of capital, it's got to go to stormwater.
Yeah,
Things
and
like
I'm
that.
okay putting a pin in it. I just don't want to forget that we've had this discussion. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what's the best way to document that we've had this discussion and that there's a preference to do it on the grant planning and that we want to revisit
I
it.
think the best way to document if you want to do a grant funding is to move it to the grant lines and take it out of the capital fund, to name the funding sources grant. And that way, when you don't have a grant, then you have the conversation, where do we want to get the money from if we want to do this?
And by moving it to grant, that doesn't mean automatically that's approved. We
Nope,
still
you
the
you have
opportunity
to approve all those
revisit
that the year that it comes. So,
it. Okay. So I amend
yes.
my budget amendment rather than to remove it.
May I suggest that we, rather than amend this, withdraw your original
Okay.
amendment and offer a new one?
Okay, That's great. I would like to withdraw CIP 1
Mhm.
and do a new amendment that moves this cost from CIP general fund to grant funding.
Be CIP 2 in the same year, 27.
Yes.
Second.
So council members, Madam Mayor and Council, I'll restate the council's motion for you
Yes,
before you
please
just,
do
okay?
that.
Yes.
So the motion then would be in fiscal year 27 in the capital improvement program, remove the under fire UTV medical rescue unit from the capital improvement sales tax and place it in the grants and donations line in fiscal year 27.
Correct.
So
Right.
does that, I'm still a little confused, I'm sorry. Does that mean
When we get
it
to,
would only be funded if we had a grant?
Yeah.
In
So-
27?
the assumption is yes.
Okay.
That is correct. We are going to pursue a grant if something's labeled such. If there is not a grant and we still believe it's a purchase to be made, the administration can make a recommendation to you to fund it from a different source and move it to someplace else than an appropriate fund in some way. Or to not go forward with purchase.
Okay.
Right. Is there further discussion?
Is that CIP 2 now?
That is CIP 2.
So.
So, yeah, so
Did we have
you have,
CIP?
you have made the motion, Emerson seconded it, we've discussed it, and so now we will vote on your amendment, which is to move the funding of the UTV to the CIP sales tax, from the CIP sales tax to the grant fund.
In fiscal 27.
And
In
it's,
fiscal 27.
Amendment CIP 2.
Yes.
Everyone clear on that?
Yes.
All right, let's go ahead with the vote then. Sorry, I automatically at 3 times or however many, please go ahead.
Councilmember Hessmeyer, since it's your first year and you got the fund one already. Councilmember
Yes,
Hessmeyer.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
No.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
4-1. Adopted. Let's move to the grant line. Councilmember Smith offers, the fourth amendment is special initiatives funding spec 1. We like the acronyms. This will take $75,000 from the fund balance in the special initiatives fund. The fund balance is the remaining balance after the estimates are concluded for this year. Of that fund balance, 75,000 will be put into a code there, 803, to hire both consultants and also to form a city internal team around physical security risks and accessibility issues and assessments of city structure, if I understand, City Hall, Parks, Recreation, and Service Center. So I think the rest is listed there. I'll turn it back to the council member.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of SPEC 1.
Second.
Actually, ever since I've been on the board, on the council, I've mentioned about security in City Hall. And you can see by the detail that's on the amendment, it will identify our security risks in this building and make sure that we mitigate any threats. The individuals that's on the front desk, the staff that's on the second floor, there's nothing stopping individuals from walking freely in those areas. And it's an assessment that needs to be made just to make sure that we're covering all of our bases. And even based on the young lady's comment today, you can see the last item is make the physical improvement recommendations to include recommendations to improve ADA accessibility. And that's something that this building needs. And believe me, somewhere along the line, somebody is going to come and make us do ADA adjustments to this building, and we won't have any choice about it. So I'd like to see us be proactive in creating getting a consultant and making a assessment of our overall risk and what we can do to repair.
I have a question. Is it required to have a consultant to do that? Are we able to do that, this kind of assessment in-house with a combination of the skills we have here?
I don't believe so.
Staff? Okay.
Thank you. It's
You don't believe so, which way?
Oh, that we, good clarification. I don't believe that we can do this type of assessment in-house. That we're going to need both a hard security looking at for downstairs if we're really assessing the fronts, but there's gonna be quite a bit of architecture as well. I mean, just our hallways aren't wide enough, wheelchair access. So I really think this is outside of the scope. I certainly would include, which thanks to Councilman Smith, when we talked about this, I would certainly include both the police departments in that conversation as well as public works. So certainly other departments would be involved, but I don't think we can do the holistic assessment.
Do you think this dollar amount is close?
For an assessment, I certainly hope so. It certainly would not include the work.
And my question is, how much is in that fund now that we're talking about moving out? Because there's a spec two, amendment
Correct.
two.
Yeah, so with the estimates for fiscal '24, this current year, estimated to be done, built on an estimate of $150,000 for the flood buyouts, for the purchases of those two properties, and then the demolition costs. We expect a closing fund balance of 590,000 going into fiscal '25. We have 590 available, which between the two amendments would be 350, correct? 350 estimate number and 75, so you're at 425. So you're still within the.
So we have enough room to do both of
Yes.
those two.
And you still have remaining fund balance for other special initiatives that may come forward.
So I will say I absolutely agree with the ADA accessibility portion of this. I worry that when we talk about security and security assessments for this building, for other buildings the city owns, that we cannot lose sight of the fact that we are a public entity for which citizens deserve access. And they don't deserve access to 100% of the building, and they don't have it right now in any building that we have. But walking into City Hall and going to the front desk, walking up and coming to see me, I think is something that I don't want us to get into a position where we are thinking of this as some way hunkering down and separating us from the public of Webster Groves.
So do we have wheelchair access to,
So,
or, yeah,
I will not speak as an ADA expert because I guess I also have to deal with appeals of ADA under our policy. But there are places where you can measure a door into the city manager's suite. It's a 30-inch door. I don't know too many wheelchairs that can still get through a
Well, you
30-inch
can't
door.
get here.
No, you can't.
that was, okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and also, just to give you an example of the architectural features, the little bump outs in the hallway arches right here. This hallway is the ramp
Yes,
here.
yes.
Those bump
It's too
outs,
tight.
they tighten that up. So Katie, I don't know if you have any comments or?
Right. I mean, if the wheelchair can get down this ramp very quickly, because it's kind of a steep slope and the staircase is on the end, it's not ideal. And the only way for the larger ones would be to have them come, if they could even get through the door here, would be up here. But then there's no.
And we did have, Steve Bader, I asked him because we obviously have done some door badge work and you've got a couple of items on your consent agenda about that, but we were looking at openers, just, the basic, the east door is downstairs, let's get an opener. And the company was like, well, that even there, you have to have a double opener because that one side of that door is no longer ADA accessible now. So the moment you put the openers on both doors are going to have to open, when that button's pressed. And so our bathroom doors are no longer accessible, even though they were built at that time to be in such a way. So the public restrooms are here on the second floor. To now couple with security conversation that you've had, you have to have the public's accessibility to the second floor to be able to achieve public restrooms, but also walk right into staff offices and such. So.
I think that speaks to the need of needing a professional should council should approve this. Mr. Peterson just rattled off a lot of things that we've identified, but I know there's other ADA issues that we haven't identified. And so if we were to invest in this, we would want to, again, holistically know what all of those issues are, which that's where the security piece comes in as well, because we certainly don't want to make ADA improvements that then have a security risk. So I think both components, and then in terms of what we were to do with that plan would be a larger discussion. And Madam Mayor, Council, I don't put ACP on the spot here. I don't know if there's any specific security questions, but I think that the acting police chief could certainly contribute to that.
In addition to that, hiring handicap workers to work at City Hall. We couldn't do that. We can't, satisfied our needs to work at City Hall.
No, I appreciate it, and I appreciate that there's a balance between being open and accessible to the public and making sure that staff feel like they're safe as well, so that's a tricky balance sometimes.
I want to say that's the first thing I told Katie, the first time I met her. How the hell did I get up here so fast and get into your office? You know, that nobody really stopped me.
And that might still be the case.
It is.
No, I mean, even after the assessment, that might still end up.
Don't know, that's why we need to do a professional
Yeah.
assessment.
All right, is there any further discussion? All right, then we have in front of us amendment SP EC 1.
Spec 1. On the amendment, spec
Peterson.
1, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hassmeyer. Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmembers Franklin and Alexander absent.
All right, I'm going to ask Mr. Peterson that we hold this amendment. I would like our other two colleagues to be in attendance, but I would like to give Councilmember Bliss the opportunity to speak. Do I need to offer the amendment in
No.
order for her to give us her position? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, that's
but
okay.
Since we're weighing in on stipends, I didn't,
Yeah.
I want to have more of us in attendance to vote, but I want to know what you think too. So,
It's not essential.
I mean, Okay.
You could just, you can make the comments.
so, this is just simply, an amendment that offers that stipend that the city manager described in the presentation, but it does so on the condition that the COLA stay at 5%. If we were to change the COLA, then this would not be effective, not become effective.
And we don't currently have a COLA amendment on the table, right? So.
Not to my knowledge.
There was not one submitted by any council.
Just for the stipend.
Right.
And my only clarification is that the 3,000 is for people with 3 years or 4 years of experience,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, it actually probably should be written that way. 3 or 4 years of experience.
Or were you saying?
Well, I guess by 4
4-year
years.
people weren't getting any?
No, they could get
Completed. Well, when you say completed, then
so
if that does it, yeah, it does it, yeah, okay. Okay, so I just wanted to give you the opportunity to say anything you might want to say, since you won't be here when we vote. And I
think
apologize
it's a
to
good
put you
idea.
on the spot.
Yeah, that's okay. Good idea.
All right,
Question.
Council members, we're now at the other 4 amendments that aren't in your, weren't in the budget package that went out on Thursday to the public. So if you wish to offer these, we can go through them in order, and I have copies for you all and then copies for the public here. So well prepared. But Councilmember Hassmeyer, I believe, is next with spec 2. And do you want to offer that one and get it out for everyone?
Yes, please.
Oh, right. Oh, excuse me.
Thanks.
while we're waiting, you can, I think, can go ahead and make the motion to, adopt SPC dash, amendment SPC dash
You
2.
want to vote next time? Is that your plan?
I mean, I'm comfortable with it this time,
All right, go ahead.
unless, yeah. Okay, yes, so I need mayor to make a motion
For
for
adoption of
adoption
amendment.
for spec 2.
Second.
And Pam's are like,
I seconded it,
yeah.
but
Yeah, so
that's okay.
Okay.
you got lots of seconds.
Okay. The reason I thought that this was important, and just being, very realistic about, what we're looking at with the climate emergency ahead of us and in, kind of, in harmony with the conversations we're having about our comprehensive plan and planning with Prop W for taking these long view, positions of, planning, we definitely need to be considering what it looks like for us to respond more, more thoroughly to our friends and neighbors who are experiencing impact from a climate change, increased type weather event. And so I thought it was really important that we, as a council, as a city, start to look at things through mitigation, which we are doing with multiple issues across our departments, but also then how do we react when such events happen? For instance, like if there's a heat wave and the power is out, do we have capabilities for a cooling center? Just thinking long-term like that.
Questions, comments?
So you're proposing to take the remaining funds out of FEMA funds, I guess, where we have that funds, and create a new fund, 50. And put those funds in there saved for future disasters. My question is, what are the rules for that future disaster? Because I'm saying that, we'll be telling the city, we have $350,000 in this fund for flood mitigation, wind mitigation, or fire mitigation. How is that dispersed equitably and in what, and how will we do that?
I've spent some considerable time this week researching other climate impact funds that some people have pulled together, municipalities and whatnot. There seems to be a lot of information out there on different ways to do that. I just haven't narrowed everything down for it to make sense for Webster. And I also, I think it would be beneficial to maybe get some help with that, if that's a possibility to consider with staff time going forward.
Okay. Councilmember Smith, may I add for just a little background?
Go ahead.
So on policy regarding funds, most of our funds are built on a special revenue source of some type, an elected action for a tax or a certain tax authorized by the state that then the voters have allowed us. So we look back at that as our scope statement, what's allowed. Great example, the sales tax for the fire department. It's built into the general fund, but ultimately that whole $700,000 has to go towards the fire. So that's how we sort of understand the scope of it. Funds like this that are, I would say, more discretionary because we're creating them and such, and there's no dedicated funding stream yet identified. I do need that scope statement at some point. And I think I would say it's administration's conversation with council member, the author, that we would hope that the council would have that policy conversation this year sometime. Because really, once you create a fund, you've got that year before we change the name or something like that. Otherwise, it lives in the books forever as the fund of the city in this way. So we're really saying if this happens, we're going to figure out that policy, at least the starting points behind it, about how we're going to dip into it and what we're not going to let happen out of those funds and where they're going to come from in the future.
So are you
No,
still-
go ahead.
My question, just like, I like it in concept and I am not opposed to that, but the way that the budget amendment is written, it makes it almost sound like the funds will only be used as payments to residents who are affected. And I don't know if that's the intent, because I feel like we don't really know the whole intent yet. We just want to do more for climate resilience. So I didn't know if we wanted to broaden the way that it was written out a little bit, so it doesn't,
I think
so it's not, so we're not restricting ourselves on how it can be used.
I think the intent was to help residents directly that are affected,
Oh, okay,
acutely affected by things.
okay. So only for buyouts
No,
and an assistant?
no, and that's where I feel like the details are
Yeah.
key.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not exactly sure like what mechanisms we would use to say, oh, well, then this this resident qualifies for a little bit of support from the city of Webster Groves because this impacted their property because of this bonkers storm or something like that. I realize that those are kind of measures that we need to look into. And I just did not have
No, and it's
that all
it's a
put
big,
together.
it's a big project. And then, are we only looking at mitigation, like something happens and we're addressing that? Or do we also want to open this funds to be able to, maybe it's still at the resident level, but help residents to be prepared for the next whatever? Or is it only if damages have been kind
Well,
of?
that's
incurred?
an interesting question, and I think that's something that certainly can be talked about in the future, like preparedness. I'm not sure that this fund would serve that piece. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, I guess to sort of piggyback on that, I think the question is, this, as written, this is very reactive, right? Something happens to a
Mhm.
resident and we do that. We're gonna get a stormwater plan back.
Mhm.
As written, I don't think anything that we learn in the stormwater plan that we might be able to do proactively could be funded from this.
Mhm.
You can change the purpose of the fund.
No, I understand that, just the way this is written at
Right,
the
yeah,
moment.
right.
And so
Mhm.
that's the part that concerns me a little bit is, is at least some of this money better spent thinking about how we can avoid the bad thing happening rather than responding to the bad thing. And I agree that we've set the precedent that if you're repetitively damaged in flood and you get that 90% level, we don't have any money to go and buy out. And we have essentially said that we would because we've done it for other people. So I think it's a good idea to set aside some money
Mhm.
to address that.
Mhm.
The question is, 350,000, what else are the uses?
I mean, part of it could be, I'm just thinking about other funds I know of, like
Mhm.
COVID funds, they were called COVID-19 Resilience Response Funds or Recovery Response Funds. So we could add the word response to the title, at least for now, to help say we are, instead of only being proactive, we are talking about things that you can't predict.
So, I'm going to offer an amendment here and bear with me as I do this. And the amendment should read that no funds will be dispensed until specific criteria have been created for the use of this fund.
We say expended.
Yes, that's what I want to say.
Funds will be expended until.
So until specific criteria have been created for the use of this fund.
So does that leave us open to be either proactive or react, like we don't
That,
know
that,
yet?
that's
just
my
in-
intention is, so I'll tell you what my intention is, and you all can tell me whether I worded the amendment properly or not. My intention is, part of, I think what you're trying to do is we have this money, hold this money for this purpose, but we haven't fully defined what we want to do with it. So this holds the money and gives us an opportunity to define much more specifically what climate resiliency is, both proactively and reactively. And no one can come to us in the meantime and say, give us some money out of this fund. Because we haven't defined it yet.
Yeah,
So your amendment is to create the rules that before we make the move.
Require us to
Right.
create the rules before we dispense $1 out of the
Or
fund.
before we move it into a special.
we can move it into the fund, we just
Fund.
can't spend it out of that fund.
My concern would be, if we put it in the climate resilience fund, what is that?
Well, that's what the amendment is saying, is we'd have to define that before we could actually put $1 out the door.
I would just like to define it before we move it. Once we define it, once we move it, somebody's gonna come ask for it.
I don't disagree with you.
A lesson I learned in our last flood situation is that community don't care. I need help. My house flooded and you should buy me out. Why won't you buy me out? Although you didn't have flood insurance, I want the city to buy me out. And I just like to have things in place before we create the fund.
Neil, by saying we can't disperse money from the fund until it is defined, Do you think that's enough of a statement that we can't do this? If somebody comes to, we have a flood tomorrow and somebody comes and says, give me money out of that fund. Are we,
You would have to approve. So I
Okay.
think what you're doing I think the language says that you as a council will establish rules before you as and those get published so that people
Yeah.
understand what their eligibility might be. You would set the rules before you would disperse the money. So you're still controlling what you do. You're simply saying, I'm gonna publish to the world what we're going to look at before we do that. Does that make sense? So you're not limiting your ability to do that. You're simply saying, I'm gonna make sure the world sees what we're doing, because you have the ability to disperse the money.
but we're also not creating a situation where when this fund exists without those rules, that a resident has the
There's
legal
no
right to, okay.
There's no time. But once you create even the eligibility rules, it would still be up to your discretion to how to spend it. Because
Okay.
let's say you've spent it all, now there's another person who might be available who comes in and the fund has been exhausted. They have a right to additional monies, they don't.
Okay.
So again, that's the sort of thing you would want to put out, but again, it's always up to you.
Okay. Now, I think we understand what my amendment is, but I don't think I got a second on my amendment.
I'll second the amendment.
There we go.
Can I say one more thing about the fund?
course.
As far as like mitigation goes, it's really important that, that this could be money that could be spent on mitigation. But if we're looking at like a stormwater management plan, and we will be seeking, I'm sure, other funding sources from
Yeah.
bipartisan infrastructure law or IRA, other funding sources for that level of project in my short time here, my short experience here.
Well, I'll give you an example of one of the things I'm thinking about in terms of this is that, yeah, I first of all, I agree with you 100% that this is not, I'm not suggesting that this is the only place that funding would come from.
Okay.
But I remember having interactions with a resident who was having an individual sinkhole problem that MSD said wasn't their fault. The city really didn't have responsibility, but there are kinds of things that it hadn't affected their property yet, but we get one or two big storms and that, well, we had the collapse of the driveway along Berry Road. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about, there's some smaller things, I think, not, this is in no way equipped to deal with the entirety of the stormwater plan.
Now, I was just thinking about those individuals with the whole thing with Schnooks. You know, how they diverted that stormwater behind Schnooks, is that correct? And going into those homes, the backyards that's flooded. Although we have some piece of property with a swell, you know, those individuals looking for the city to do something to fix that. And our hands were tied because it was really Schnook's responsibility.
We've done several things.
Oh, I
I
know.
don't want to forget that part of it.
We cleaned out the and all that stuff, but I can just see a quick and consistent asking of these funds. And once they're gone, they're gone, and we're gonna fund it again.
Well, I like the idea of setting some of those special initiative funds for climate resilience. And I like the idea of the amendment to make sure that we know what that means before we start expending those funds.
So right now we have an amendment to the amendment. I'm gonna suggest that we at least go ahead and vote on the amendment to the amendment. And then, because that's my part of this, and then we'll go from there. So is there any more discussion on the amendment, which adds that we will dispense, no funds will be will be what? What is the word? Expended, thank you. No funds will be expended until specific criteria has been created for the use of this fund.
Somebody second that?
I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Madam Mayor and members, on the Arnold motion to amend spec 2. Councilmember Hassmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin and Alexander absent.
All right. We now have the amended amendment. SP
EC2.
EC2. And would you like to continue this evening or would you like to hold this until next?
I'm fine to move forward.
Okay. Is there additional discussion?
Madam Mayor and members, I want to make one point. This will be entered in the document as a $350,000 estimate. It's an estimate number, but the way it's written, if the flood buyouts come in at $100,000 and there's an extra 50,000, it'll be 400,000 that gets transferred. If those flood buyouts come out more expensive, and now we're down to 300,000, that's what it'll be to take it. So out of the 500,000 set aside for flood buyouts, once that project is done, those funds expended, encumbered, we know that balance, that balance is what it will be actually moved into the fund. And we'll report that to you, obviously, when that transfer does happen.
And the budget amendment can be done regardless if we have more or less at that time.
We won't need a budget amendment. This motion will satisfy for the auditor.
Wrote it in
the
a way
Need for fund control to have your approval to move whatever the number is, the sum certain of whatever that number is. Along the way. So we'll report it back to you. It's like a preemptive budget amendment. So
All right. we're
on
ready
adoption
for the
of
vote.
SPEC 2 as amended, Council Member Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin is absent. Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander is absent. Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Hassmeyer.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
5-0. Mr. Smith's item is next, which is General Fund 4.
Mhm.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Smith's item, as he goes to Washington, is to demonstrate on the Freestyle Pass program. It establishes a $3,000 line item in scholarships in Program 21, which is the Aquatic Center in the general fund. That expense will be offset by the city manager making a reduction of $3,000 somewhere else in the Parks and Recreation Department budget before adoption of the budget at the recommendation of the Parks and Recreation Director.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of GF4.
Second.
So what you have before you is, the swim pass program, freestyle swim pass program has been in existence for the last 3, maybe even 4 years. I can't remember now. To help those that are unable to afford to go to the pool for daily passes. Each year, we've been able to provide that. Some donations from the public. What I'm asking is for us to city to demonstrate their support for this type of program to be more inclusive for those that are unable to use the pool. Sarah mentioned that, the city manager and on the recommendation of the Parks Recreation Director would decrease the general fund appropriations in the amount of 3,000 prior to adoption of the budget.
So Emerson, just a question about the program generally. So
Mhm.
this started as a privately funded initiative.
Yes.
Did we, as the city, provide funds that first year?
No.
And this is third year?
There didn't provide funds the first year nor the second year. If I can remember my numbers correctly, the first year, I think we maybe dispersed maybe about $3,500. The second year was close to $7,000. And this third year is like $10,000. So the balance after we pay the bill for this year will have about 3,000 left. The Recreation Director and the City Manager did use some of the general fund from the scholarship fund of $3,000 to help with payment of this year's bill.
So now I'm confused. So the partnership, I know it started as the Ministries, the Alliance, raising the money through the ministries. And they pay, those organizations, the public donated the full amount that we attributed in the first year.
Yes,
Is that also true for the second year?
yes.
So what is it that has been used to pay? You just said pay the balance, and I'm not sure. Is that year 3 or we're going into year 4? I'm a little confused about where we are.
I believe it would be year 3, Councilman.
Year 3, thank you.
Fiscal 24 that we're in, right?
This current, yes.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
4.
No, it was
Okay.
for last season. It's FY 24.
Okay,
But this past, so the current fiscal year that we're in, we applied $3,000 from the Parks and Rec one of their line items to go towards the FY '24 invoice.
And that was applied because there were insufficient public funds private funds raised?
No, they have not, tried to raise any more private funds yet. Their comment is that they told the community they're gonna ask for funds every other year. But, there are individuals that still donate every year. So we're just, looking this year, after the city kick in theirs, we'll have maybe about 3,000 or 4,000 to start from for this coming, swim. summer.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm supportive of the program. I'm a regular donor to the program. So but I'm trying to figure out why this is becoming a larger portion of it seems to be supported by the city if we have a public that in the past has been willing to pay for this program.
Not the
or
larger
community.
portions paid by the city, it's still.
No, I mean larger relative to when it started, not larger in the terms of the
Oh,
time.
yes.
Councilman, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, thank you. It seems to me that, so there was a lot more usage in FY '24 than there had been the first 2 years of the startup. And there certainly was a lot more families rather than individual one-off passes. So there were some conversations at the last freestyle pool meeting that we had for this pass regarding how to restructure the program. There's going to be some different fundraising approaches because as a policy group, and Councilman Smith, you were in at the beginning, the decision was that they would fundraise every other year. I believe they're reversing that decision and knowing now that there's an increased uptake and perhaps an increased need. It's hard to determine that they will need to fundraise every year. So that's part of the issue of why the cost went up because they gave out substantially more, and Director Davis could speak to this. I apologize, I have the numbers off my head. They gave out substantially more passes during FY '24 than during the first 2 years.
Which to me is great. Again, I don't have a problem with the program. I just wanted, it was unclear to me. This is a public-private partnership that the private sector has led, the nonprofit sector. And I want to make sure that we're not saying that we're just going to take that over now because we have a community that I know will support this. And so I think we need to focus on that community support.
So Madam Mayor, another piece of that was discussed as well, and I'm certainly was just attending the meeting, not the spokesman of the group. But one of the questions that I asked, since it was asked that the city share some funds, which I authorized the 3,000 to be shared, but the majority of the participants' families are school district families. And so the question raised is the school district contributing as well? And the answer was no. However, I don't know that there's been a real strong ask of the school district. So one of the things, and I have not discussed this with Councilman Smith, but one of the things that I would ask, and I did so in that meeting, is that perhaps the school district would be willing to match that 3,000 that the city put in. If this is going to be a continued expectation, because the need's going to grow. And one of the things that I asked of the group, we're going to have a brand new, wonderful water park.
It's going to go through the roof.
It's going to go through the roof. And the needs there, anecdotally, I think that it is there. So it's going to go through the roof. And so therefore is even fundraising going to be able to sustain that? And one of the things that the group talked about was turning off the passes earlier this year. Was it July? You don't have to compute.
They end up changing the number, so they're usually about 1,000 passes.
Okay, thank you.
And we have
One-
17 days less.
One of the discussion points, and it sounds like they reversed course after that, but was to turn off the pass, just to stop accepting passes after a certain date. There would still be days left in the swim season, but we wouldn't allow those families or those children to use those passes. So obviously the group changed course, but anyway, I would ask, and perhaps Councilman Smith, if that perhaps is an appropriate amendment, to match the school district or for an official request for the school district, if this is going to be something that the city supports.
Is it one pass per person per visit?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm prepared to walk down the street and ask the school district to support.
I am too.
Do you want to make an amendment? to
I don't
that?
think that needs an amendment. I think that is something that we certainly can do. I think this is our budget and we need to make a decision. But I do think that that is very much an appropriate thing for us to ask of them.
Mhm. We have a second on the motion.
Second.
Yes,
Thank you.
Emily.
The
Emily
original,
had one.
the original
Yeah.
one, yeah, I second.
All right, is there further discussion? Just, okay, just want to make sure, you know, the chief got to come up here and talk, Mara got to come up here and talk.
Scott, you can have the next two, so.
All right, I think we are ready for the vote then on amendment. I lost my list again.
General Fund 4, GF4.
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 On Councilmember Smith's amendment, Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander is absent, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hassmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin is absent, Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
5-0. Councilmember Hickson Shepherd has next GF5. Wish to bring that up at this time, Councilmember?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hold back down here.
No. Oh, good. Is this just an extra?
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd's amendment
Yeah, I put my.
GF5 highlights the increase in the general fund expenditures, non-personnel costs. So these are the classifications, non-personnel, materials and supplies, contractual services, capital outlay, and other expenditures in the fire department, which is program 9 in the, program 11. Highlights the increase in those expenditures and then calls for a reduction of 20% to be determined by the city manager and the fire department, the fire chief. And then those adjustments made prior to adoption down in a total of $19,557 and reported back to council.
And this is similar to the next amendment too, which is for police, but just the non-personnel expenses, I know we don't have a lot of wiggle room. Sorry, oh, yes.
It's okay. I was gonna let you finish your statement, but yes, you're gonna have to
Your
make a
Worship, for
motion.
the amendment of amendment GF1, 5.
Second.
Thanks. So just the increases seemed large on the non-personnel section, so personnel aside, the non-personnel budget for fire increased by $97,000, which was about a 26% increase over the previous year. So just wanted to bring that down a little bit so that 20% is 20% of the increase would be, that's how those numbers work together. And then we would leave it up to chief and city manager to come up with where exactly they felt those cuts should happen, but just to bring that down a little bit.
Chief, do you mind coming up? I have a couple questions for you that will inform my decision on this, I think. And if anyone else does as well. So the meetings and conferences line, I believe there's a more than 5 times increase in that. And I wanted to understand who's going to conferences. Is that spread through the ranks? Is it mostly you? What does that look like in terms of attendance for the overall department?
So that was to mirror the way PD's budget had been set up. I moved money out of training budget to meetings and conferences and spelled out each of the conferences. We budget about $1,000. We budget $1,000 per chief. That's $5,000. And the rest of the meetings and conferences are for captains and below to attend. When I inherited the budget in January of 2022, the training budget was $12,000, and y'all tripled it for me per the request of 36. As we started aligning with the different training agencies, Central Core Training Division, as well as North County Training, to get our firefighters 2 to 3 live fires a year and such, the cost of everything has gone up, from the consumables to just the cost of getting fire fields rented for our burns. But the meetings and conferences were in training. I just moved that out after discussing with Dr. Peoples that needed to be there.
Is that
broken.
consistent? What was, say, last year meeting conference expenditure?
We had, so the original meetings and conferences, I just had it for chief officers, and it was $5,000.
Okay.
because I wanted to show that we're sending our training funds are going toward line staff as opposed to chiefs absorbing more of the training budget, which typically happens in fire departments.
So I can interpret, to see if this is a fair interpretation, that the increase in this budget, this line for meetings and conferences, you all at the chief level stay pretty much the same, and it's adding in other people who would be attending conferences instead.
That is correct.
Okay.
So we're increasing both in the meetings and conferences and. in
Oh, no,
training
we
and
haven't gotten to
education.
training yet. I
Yeah.
know.
So it's not just that like it came out of one and went to the other, like both of the lines went up.
Yeah. So so training is my other question, because, you did say it quadrupled over 4 years. We've quadrupled it plus a 50% increase this year. That is unsustainable in terms of a budget, especially when we have such a significant increase in personnel costs in the fire department. And I guess my question to you is, how do we balance when we know personnel costs are going up and we know we still have to stick to a budget? How do we balance those two things in a way that doesn't mean we have a fire department that's having these huge increases compared to other departments that also have needs but aren't getting those met in the same way?
So that's a great question. I'd say first off, I've been under budget last year and I'll be under budget this year. So clearly we're on target for budget. Secondly, I did a budget comparison of, I think it was 9 fire departments in the area of their training budgets and the number of staff they have. We are the least funded training budget. Our staffing is pretty close to Clayton's, and theirs is about $150,000 for training. So as appreciative as I absolutely was for the 36, that's less than $1,000 per member. So we're at a point now to be part of Central Core Training Division, as we are part of them now, but we are doubling the trainings we're going to be getting, moving to that level. So that's the big cost increase. At $44,000, we can't hire a training officer. At $88,000, we can't hire a training officer. And so how do we get our people the best training with the people we're running with on auto aids, the way all of our fire ground safety initiatives are set up for us to run together? I inherited a talented, under-trained, under-supported workforce, and 2.5 years later, we're just now getting where we're providing opportunities for people through certification classes, because now we can afford that. But getting the actual hands-on training and some of that special ops training, like our water rescue team is a prime example, has been critical for us to be able to be ahead of some of the emergencies that were going on. So we've just been undertrained. And so we're playing catch up in a number of areas, and this is one of the primary areas. I really only had 2 cost increases in our budget compared to this past year, because that I could control, which was our health and wellness and our training. The rest are just the cost of goods, from IVs and needles and such. So like all those costs with inflation, we have to be ahead of that. And so I think it does matter that we've been able to do a lot for our people with just over 5% operating funds of our budget. I understand the cost of salaries, and that because I manage the money there outside of salaries. So we're making a lot of good magic with just over 5%. And the support of the training is the number one thing that we continually need to have. Because our demographics of our fire department, we've lost a lot of institutional knowledge. I've hired 21 people in 2.5 years. And our department is extremely young when it comes to fire experience. Therefore, I need to increase the training for our firefighters.
Talk a little bit about the medical examinations line that goes up. You see that? From 22 to 40,000.
Yeah, that's great. So to kind of piggyback the initial budget meeting, the primary increase is for this budget year. That number will go down over $8,000 next year. We brought on duty health in, which is an NFPA 1582 compliant physical. Really proud of that. The state, it provides that additional cancer screenings that we can't get here through other local vendors. And so the actual physical is about $650. They come to us and our firefighters, all of us go through it. The increase this year is really a one-time cost with next year, we have 5 years off for this, for anyone over 40 for a cancer screening called the gallery screening. I ran some numbers because it does matter. Firefighters have a 9% higher risk of being diagnosed with cancer and 14% higher risk of dying from cancer than the general US population, according to CDC and NIOSH. Cancer caused 70% of the line of duty deaths for career firefighters in 2016. Cancer caused 66% of the career firefighter line of duty deaths from 2002 to 2019. And so this gallery screening tests for 50 different cancers for people 40 and older every 5 years. And then those 50 and older, it's every year. Next year, we'll do this gallery screening test for 4 people. This year, there's 11 people. That test alone is expensive. But we start looking at potential work comp claims and payouts. That additional cost on the preventative side for our firefighters to know what's growing in their bodies based on the risk of our job is a lot cheaper than what that payout's going to be on a work comp claim.
Thanks.
That's the increase of the physical.
All right, other questions for the chief?
Yeah, it's after 9 o'clock, so I'm not thinking it's clear. So you're recommending that we decrease what budget by 20%?
So the increase of 97,000 is a 26% increase.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm recommending reducing that 97,000 by 20%,
Okay.
which is 19,000.
This is the fire department general fund for non-personnel pension,
For non-personnel costs.
for non-personnel costs.
Mhm.
Okay. Pension was throwing me off, I guess. It's not for the pension, it's just their.
Doesn't have anything to do
There's
with personnel
one-
or pension.
There is one line with some flexibility, but it could impact just some of the projects that will have initiatives in place. Our overtime line for training, meetings, and special events is the one line that we could trim down. We have some community risk reduction initiatives that could be impacted, but we also applied for a prevention grant for $100,000. So that would help offset some of the cost. Clearly, with our community risk reduction initiatives as well as prevention initiatives, those are many tactics attached to the goals that you've set forth, and I created the tactics with my team to support some of the community outreach and education that we need to be doing. So that line reducing it could impact some of those items, but we would just prioritize differently.
I mean, the way I see this, and this kind of rolls into some of the other personnel conversations we've had, is that we have excellence in service as our mission, vision, and values, and we're to have goals and tactics to keep our service excellent. So I think training and the wellness initiatives he's talking about just all lend itself to having a better, happier staff, a more trained staff, and ultimately provide better service for people in need. So I'm not for doing this reduction.
Right. Other comments? I will just make the point that I will vote no on this amendment, but chief, we can't do 50% again next year, and we can't I know that we want to keep up, and I appreciate Pam's point. But you know, the incremental rate has really just got to change.
I think it's a value to recognize what I inherited at $12,000.
Yep.
It was always underfunded because it wasn't, I'm guessing, sold as such a priority.
Yeah.
And as I met with my people 2.5 years ago, they didn't get to go to classes. They didn't go to trainings. They had to go to certifications on their own. So I'm shifting that culture to pour into their support that they deserve and should have always been getting. Where we will land with CCTD, Central Core, you won't hear me ask for an increase next year because this is a sweet spot to be. The health and wellness line will go down because of the cancer screening. So
and it's understandable why that's variable given.
So
yeah, because that's something we need.
And I do understand the importance of the training, and I didn't want to come in and say like this line needs to be cut and that line needs to be cut. I'm hoping that we can do a lot of the things that you want to do with just a little bit with an $80,000 increase instead of a $97,000 increases. But I'm not prescribing that it come off of training or any other areas.
We've been making it happen with what we've got pretty well. And I'm really proud of even our Swift Water team is a prime example. We were able to be ahead of calls after July 26th of 2022 with water rescues ever since. Because we invested in equipment and training in the people. And that's just a prime example. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, is there further discussion? All right, thank you. Let's have the vote, please.
On amendment GF5, Councilmember Smith,
No.
Councilmember Alexander is absent, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hassmeyer,
No.
Mayor Arnold, excuse me, Councilmember Bliss,
No.
Councilmember Franklin's absent, Mayor Arnold,
No.
1-4, it does not pay.
Do you want to take a moment? The amendment didn't pass, but it spurred a very good conversation, so thank you for that.
Oh, sure.
I go to the next. You
Sure.
just- All right.
This one is very similar. This is for a police. It's a smaller increase and a smaller reduction requested. Similar discussion, just, this was, like I said, it's a smaller increase. It went up by 15%, which was about 61,000. And I'm asking to reduce that 61,000 by 9%, so trim that 61,000 by 5,500. And to leave that up to acting chief and city manager to determine where that might come from.
All right.
So I would move
Yep.
to adopt amendment GF6.
Second.
All right, now we have discussion. You add it, you
Yeah, I think I've
give
said
us the
my,
intention.
yeah.
Are there other questions or comments? Chief Perks
Guess
is
the
here.
question is, the non-personnel costs were training, what would it be here with the police budget?
If you go, Madam Councilmember, you go to the police tab, you'll be able to find it there. Flip over on the page, and some page numbers, looks like 96 to me.
96 and 97.
Yep. So 96, well, you'll see materials and supplies will start there, with 701 in the middle of the page. And then the total of materials supplies increase is 8,900. The biggest increase there is going to be in munitions. Obviously, we've just bought new handguns for the police, pistol replacement, I believe was this year. Contractual services starts in 803 and goes on to the next page. That is an increase of 47,000. The largest increase in the lines there is vehicle maintenance, going up by 30,000 this year. And I certainly will let Chief Perks speak to the rationales behind the request and what is proposed.
Hi, Chief, thank you.
Yes.
I'm just curious about the maintenance. Is that about the age of our vehicles? Is that's a significant change from year over year?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. That increase is based off of the cost of repairs that we're doing on inflation. We've had a couple of vehicles that went out, had transmissions go out this year. And that cost of a transmission repair went from about $2,500 to almost $6,000 for a repair of a transmission. And to be honest with you, a couple of the repairs we've had to make on our EV vehicles, the cost of repairs on the EV vehicles is significantly higher than the gasoline vehicles.
Other questions? All right, I just will say in my just in reviewing this personally, I mean, I agree with the overall, let's try and keep some costs down, but some of this is just stuff we're gonna have to bite the bullet and pay for.
Bite the bullet, really.
Oh, yeah, geez, I didn't even think of that. Oh,
There
Lord.
was an increase in the ammunition cost.
I know. And I know there's a scarcity.
We did it. That,
If only I were smart enough to do that on purpose.
yeah, so next year, that cost will go down, and it was a transition with our new pistols because we went from a 40 caliber handgun to a 9mm handgun. So it was a complete purchase of new ammunition and a different caliber in the transition to that. So
Okay.
Have you guys been able to find the ammunition?
I'm sorry, say again.
Have you been able to find the ammunition? I thought I heard it was kind of hard to locate.
Currently, we are, but there is rumors out there that that is going to be difficult again to get a hold of.
Chief, the EVs, and their repairs, was it, like, was there an amount budgeted to, like, is there like a specific repair budget that you all have had and that's just blown out of the water with the EVs because of how?
Correct. No, it was not just because of the EVs. We had an extensive amount of our vehicles just break this year.
Yeah.
And so with the cost of inflation, looking at what we had budgeted for last year, then for the current year, and we're over budget in that section for this year. So I increased it with bringing on the new EVs and the new hybrids. And hopefully that number may be down. That's one of the things that we don't know.
Yeah.
When vehicles break, they break, and we don't know when they're going to break.
Right.
So, and once a vehicle is out of warranty, then we encumber that entire cost.
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Mr. Peterson.
On amendment GF6, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hesmeyer,
No.
Councilmember Bliss,
No.
Councilmember Franklin is absent, Councilmember Smith,
No.
Councilmember Alexander is absent, Mayor Arnold.
No.
1 to 4, it is not adopted. Council members, we have adopted the amendments or dealt with and dispensed of the amendments that you have prepared for the evening. We will get all those entered and typed up into the meetings and such minutes for the Madam Clerk. This is a time, if you have questions about anything in the budget, we're happy to answer them. Dr. Peoples is happy to answer questions you have in budget. No, but
will you
just
provide
a brief update real quick on next meeting. So I certainly, we will always be prepared if you decide to amend on the last night budget adoption, but I will look at you over the top of my glasses. I'm learning how to do now in my life. So I would encourage us to have our amendments prepared for next meeting on the 4th. We also will have an amendment from the manager correcting any errors that we may find in some areas. We have a couple little small amounts of things, but just to make sure we get the final statements all to line up for you all. But then also our review of this year's revenue, that policy of trying to make sure our revenue estimates are lining up to the amended budget, so we don't have a yawning variance of $1 million again coming up like we have this ending 23. So we'll have a 24 amendment probably next time as well to look at the revenue where we're at for this current fiscal year.
And we will have the board and commission.
The board and commission amendments
Amendments
that
as
you
well.
discussed in the
Yeah.
work session. Okay, great. So now Dr. Peoples are ready to answer all your questions on the minute details of the budget.
So I had a long list of questions, but they have all now been answered, minus one, which I'm going to save for next time. So anyone else with additional questions? All right. Thank you all for your time and attention to these things. I'm going to suggest, given the lateness of the hour, that we postpone the discussion of the concealed carry proposal for juveniles and the public engagement discussion. I will consult with the city clerk and the city manager and city attorney and figure out whether that might be better placed at the next meeting, or if we should wait until we get a little further through the budget before considering those, if that is okay with council members in attendance. Yes. All right, then Councilmember Hasselmeyer, would you call for the approval of the consent agenda, please? Sorry.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval and adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
I guess before we vote, I forgot to ask if anyone wants to remove anything.
Nope.
All right, please go ahead. Sure.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hassemeyer.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes. And if I can find it, we've made a number of appointments to boards and commissions. Mary Bargeron has been appointed to the Sustainability Commission. Katie Cahoon to the Old Orchard Special Business District. Matt Rudy to the Sustainability Commission. Eric Toman to the Traffic Advisory Commission, Jerry Rosen to the Business Development Commission, Alex Olmsted reappointed to the Arts Commission, Tammy Bem and Stacy Swerdurska reappointed to the Business Development Commission, Dana Cooley and Fred Toll reappointed to the Library Board, Karen Anderson and Amana Anwar reappointed to the Sustainability Commission. I think that's all. All right. We now will have, if we could have a motion for closed session.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed session related to attorney-client privilege communications, Missouri statute 610.021, open friends, 1, close friends, and personnel, Missouri statute 610.021, open friends, 3, close friends.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Hassemeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
All right, we'll go to closed session. Thank you very much to all of our department directors and staff members